Marvel's master of multiversal magic. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 401 Gamora and Star-Lord. Coulson, what's up? Don't worry about the island, it's a floating island I built myself. Our school will be relocated there from now on. There's no danger, tell them to relax. On the school playground, George hung up the phone with a smile. The island had a spell for overall invisibility, as well as a muggle-shielding charm and a charm of unwavering loyalty. If he wanted, he could have made the island float silently above the city, unnoticed by anyone. But he didn't. He deliberately revealed the floating island. Not for fun, but to deliberately scare the higher-ups and citizens, reminding them of the fear Kerr had instilled, thus making them understand the importance of the Superpower Academy. Politicians come and go, but no matter who's in charge, they're all the same in the end. They're always thinking about how to control this Superpower Academy, a powerful force influencing the entire world order. So every now and then, they need to be given a warning, to let them know their limitations. The citizens are the same. Don't be fooled by the current friendliness of most citizens towards the Superpower Academy, even having many die-hard fans. The masses are always foolish. It's not about being the only one sober in a world of fools, or that everyone else is stupid while I'm the only smart one. Rather, being part of the crowd, unless you're directly involved or a mastermind behind it, it's difficult not to be influenced. There's a theory in communication studies called the spiral of silence. This theory describes the phenomenon where, when people express their thoughts and opinions, if they see that their views are widely accepted, they actively participate, and these views are expressed and spread more boldly. Conversely, if they find that a particular view is ignored or receives little attention, sometimes even facing attacks from the masses, they remain silent even if they agree with it. The silence of one side amplifies the voice of the other, creating a spiral where one side's voice grows stronger while the other becomes increasingly silent. The theory is based on the assumption that most individuals strive to avoid isolation caused by holding certain attitudes and beliefs alone. So, while the public is currently praising the superpowered academy and its heroes for saving the world and themselves, if a powerful force is secretly manipulating public opinion, the tide can quickly turn if the narrative spreads rapidly. Even if a few clear-headed individuals remain unaffected, most would likely immediately shift from praise to insults and curses. Superman is amazing, isn't he? He's saved the world countless times, but the good deeds he's done alone are already many times more than what the Superpower Academy has accomplished. Yet he was still manipulated by villains to turn from a hero into a criminal. He doesn't have Superman's good character and temper. To prevent that from happening, he felt it was necessary to constantly instill fear in those higher-ranking officials and citizens, to remind them of fear. This way, they would understand the consequences of standing against the Superpower Academy. Only then would they remain clear-headed and unaffected by public opinion. When something involves their own interests, or even their lives, no matter how inflammatory the public opinion, it cannot sway them. You definitely did it on purpose. Wolverine watched George hang up the phone, puffing on his cigar, a similar smile on his face. To be honest, he liked his current life and George's way of doing things. The old mutant school was also good, everyone loved each other, but sometimes it was really frustrating, constantly subjected to various forms of targeting and harassment from human governments and militaries. Charles's efforts to maintain harmony between humans and mutants were consistently tolerant, even leading to the capture, experimentation, and dissection of many mutant students. This isn't to say Charles was wrong. Without Charles, he wouldn't have integrated into the mutant school community or resolved his inner conflicts. Many mutants were united because of Charles's tolerance. However, it's clear that excessive kindness isn't a good thing. It's precisely this excessive kindness that has led to the near extinction of mutants. To say this is solely due to George's superior strength wouldn't be entirely accurate. Remember, at his peak, Charles could instantly kill all humans with his brainwave amplifier. Is that enough power? It's more accurate to say that George was more suited to leadership than Charles. Although he often secluded himself, leaving the school primarily to Charles, every decision he made was crucial. They're never quiet unless I scare them a little, George waved his hand, producing a key shaped like a stone gate, and addressed all the teachers and students on the playground. Now, everyone line up and walk through the stone gate. From now on, our school will be on the floating island. After the excited students and teachers entered the island in the sky through the key, George cast the mountain-moving spell again over the entire school, including the basement. This school, after so much time and effort, contained a wealth of advanced technology and his magic, so it couldn't be abandoned. He could simply move it to the center of the island and embed it there. While George was busy with the school's relocation, an invisible spaceship quietly landed in a deserted forest somewhere in Florida. The spaceship door opened, and an alien woman with green skin, dressed in leather, stepped out. Planet C-53, a low-level civilization planet, with zero threat from the native inhabitants. However, since even Thanos is so wary of it, I'd better be careful. Her name is Gamora Jean Hubeli Ben Titan, a Zehuberline alien. Her parents were killed by Thanos when she was a child, and she was adopted by Thanos and raised to become the universe's most powerful spy and assassin. Her mission this time was to infiltrate Planet C-53, secretly find the Tesseract, and bring it back to Thanos. However, she didn't want to do that. Her plan was to find the Tesseract, sell it to a collector for $4 billion, and escape Thanos' control with that money. Disguise, she took out a metal plate and attached it to her body, quickly turning her skin from green to white. As the universe's most skilled spy, she had naturally investigated the planet's language, civilization, and other aspects before coming here, and had made some preparations in advance. In this direction, after disguising herself as an Earthling, she took out a special device and began to scout. This was a reconnaissance device personally designed and manufactured by Thanos, capable of detecting the energy of the Tesseract, but its range was limited and it couldn't detect objects across planets. Meanwhile, at the closest space jump point to Earth, a massive spaceship bearing the Marauder insignia suddenly sprang out and headed precisely towards Earth's location. Chapter 402. A large number of aliens are descending. Yondu, we've arrived at Terran. Should we just charge in? Inside the giant spaceship, a raider in a leather jacket asked Yondu, the blue-skinned leader. Yondu put down his food, walked to the front, looked at the azure planet outside the spaceship, and shook his head. No, you stay here to provide support. I'll take a few people and Peter in. What's there to worry about on a low-tech civilization planet that can't even leave its star system? Do as I say, we'll just charge in. Kill anyone who resists, and find the cosmic cube as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble once the other raiders and bounty hunters arrive. A raider beside him, his face disfigured as if by an electric shock, clearly disagreed with Yondu's decision. 3 days ago, a mysterious figure posted a high-priced bounty, offering $1 billion for something called the Cosmic Cube, and even gave the name of the planet where the Cosmic Cube was located, Terran. All the space raiders and bounty hunters went crazy after seeing the bounty. $1 billion bounty is undoubtedly the highest level on the bounty list, especially considering it's a simple item-finding bounty on the low-level civilization of Terran. While a place like Xandar might be a headache, Terran poses virtually no threat. Therefore, almost all raiders and bounty hunters accepted the mission. In comparison, there are other billion-dollar bounties, but they are nowhere near as dangerous. For example, the second highest-ranked bounty is killing the Mad Titan Thanos. The reason they arrived earlier than other raiders and bounty hunters is because they had been to Terran over 20 years ago on a mission and knew its location. However, this only gives them a few hours head start. Terran's location isn't particularly secret, any reasonably capable team could easily find it. If Yondu follows his approach, this advantage will quickly disappear. Fool, you think this is really just an ordinary, low-level civilization planet? Yondu wasn't one to tolerate his subordinates. He kicked the raider who dared to question him to the ground and explained, I investigated when I came to pick up Peter last time. This planet Terran is one of the planets protected by Asgard. And you idiot, can you guess why the Nova Empire doesn't have troops stationed here, even though it's in the same galaxy, Asgard? Hearing Yondu mention Asgard, the raiders all gasped. Asgard was a legendary existence in the universe, with an average age of 5,000 years, explosive individual combat power, and advanced technology. Even the Kree didn't dare to provoke it. $1 billion bounty? You really think it's so easy to take? He sneered, then ordered the thinner raider beside him, Kraglin, go wake that brat Peter up. He needs to go home. Moments later, the entire raider megaship disappeared into space, and a smaller raider ship emerged from it, landing in Missouri. 3 hours later, ships bearing various markings began appearing from the jump points, heading towards Earth. One of the smaller ships was even piloted by a raccoon. As it pulled a lever all the way back, swiftly maneuvering its spaceship, nimbly dodging obstructing meteorites and overtaking the ships in front, it excitedly shouted to the Trent sitting in the back, who was lost in thought, "Growth, ha ha ha, a billion. As long as we find that tesseract, we'll have a billion. A billion is enough for us to live a life of luxury forever. You damned fools. None of you will steal my bounty." Meanwhile, on the ravaged Titan, the Chitauri elder, holding the Mind Stone, knelt on one knee and reported to the purple-skinned Thanos, who sat high on his throne, "The bounty has been issued as you instructed. Those raiders and bounty hunters should be arriving on Terran soon." "Very good. Now it's up to Gamora. She has never disappointed me, and I think she won't this time either." The throne turned, and Thanos' lips gradually curled into a smile. Indeed, all of this was his plan, his goal being to obtain the Space Stone hidden on Terran. His experience on Titan had taught him that the universe would eventually be destroyed due to resource depletion caused by population growth. To save the universe, balance was essential, and to achieve balance, population control was necessary. Thus, he began building a space fleet, expanding his power and strength, and constantly invading other inhabited planets, aiming to achieve his desired balance by randomly killing half the planet's inhabitants. However, this method was far too inefficient. He might die before achieving his goal. Fortunately, he later obtained intelligence that by collecting 6 Infinity Stones, he could instantly wipe out half of all life in the universe, fulfilling his objective. However, these 6 Infinity Stones were not easy to collect. Currently, he only possessed the Mind Stone from the Chitauri, which he had subdued. According to intelligence gathered by his agents, Odin of Asgard had once collected the Infinity Stones and even forged a gauntlet that could utilize them. But for unknown reasons, he abandoned the project. He knew that Odin had hidden the Space Stone on Terran, entrusting it to humanity. The Reality Stone was originally in the hands of the Dark Elves, later seized by Odin's father, Bor, and was either in Asgard or on Terran. The Time Stone was also on Terran, kept by the Ancient One, the guardian of the Infinity Stones. He's still investigating the locations of the Power Stone and the Soul Stone, and hasn't found any clues yet. So, if he can capture Terra, he might be able to acquire all 3 Infinity Stones at once. But that's clearly not an easy task. Even though his fleet dominates the universe, and even the Nova Corps and the Kree Empire can't do anything to him, he's not confident he can contend with Odin and the Ancient One, the guardian of the Infinity Stones. Since brute force won't work, he'll have to act covertly. The location of the Reality Stone is unclear, and the Time Stone has a guardian, so he'll first try to get his hands on the Space Stone from humanity. His daughter Gamora, as the universe's strongest spy, has never failed in similar missions, and in order to distract Odin and the Ancient One, he's also sent a large number of cannon fodder through bounties. Even if they fail in the end, it doesn't matter, at least they can probe some of the enemy's strength and prepare for a later invasion. He definitely wants to get his hands on all 6 Infinity Stones. Currently, with only the Mind Stone, he's no match for Odin and the Ancient One, but if he can get the Power Stone and the Soul Stone, with the 3 Infinity Stones in hand, he would have a good chance of defeating either Odin or the Ancient One. Chapter 403 Invading Earth? All done. On the floating island, George inscribed the final spell on a yellow school bus and said to Bronsky beside him, "Emil, you'll be driving this school bus from now on. I'll show you the basics in a bit." Bronsky, also known as Abomination, had previously served as the school's gatekeeper. Now that the school had moved to the floating island, there was no need for a gatekeeper anymore, so he became the school's driver. This yellow school bus was the magical school bus he had just modified. It possessed multiple functions, including flight, invisibility, internal space expansion, and external magical defense, and could transport the school's teachers and students between the floating island and the city below. In fact, George had made quite a few key ports and distributed one to major cities around the world, so he could easily travel to different cities using them. However, those key ports were only used when necessary. For other travel between the floating island and the city below, they could use the school bus or other magical vehicles he had modified. This was also for safety reasons. If port keys were used normally, the floating island's magical defenses would be useless, as enemies could also use them to enter. However, using magical transportation is different. The entire island is protected by a fidelity charm. Without his permission, no one else can even detect the floating island. Even if someone wanted to hitch a ride, they'd have to get past the abomination first. While George was instructing Bronski on how to drive the magical school bus, a classic red sports car, aided by a flamethrower, flew into the floating island and landed beside the school playground. "Good morning, our new director of SHIELD, Carlson. What brings you here?" George stopped instructing Bronski upon seeing Carlson and waved. Besides the teachers and students, he had granted a select few the right to enter the school, one of whom was the current director of SHIELD, Carlson. The new SHIELD is an international organization that was reorganized after the Washington incident. The original SHIELD, due to Nick Fury's death and Hydra's infiltration, transformed from the largest agency protecting global security into a national agency similar to the CIA. However, after the Washington incident, high-ranking officials from various countries deeply felt the crisis. If even high-ranking officials in Washington could be killed by a city falling from the sky, then they wouldn't be any different. Therefore, after discussions, high-ranking officials from various countries unanimously decided to reorganize SHIELD, establishing an organization capable of protecting global security and preventing and handling special events. This is the current new SHIELD. The new SHIELD's director wasn't originally Carlson, but there was no other way. No one else could contact George. And to handle a catastrophe caused by an entity of Carlson's caliber, George and the Superpower Academy were necessary. Even with the full support of various countries, the new SHIELD couldn't achieve much in the short term. Its main role was to proactively detect potential crises around the world and then seek George's help. This is because George didn't create the school for teachers and students to fight evil. Their main purpose was teaching in classes, not proactive intervention. If a new SHIELD had existed back then, and discovered the anomalies in Sokovia beforehand, and found George to lead a team to Sokovia to defeat Clover, the Washington incident wouldn't have happened. Therefore, it was unanimously decided that Carlson would remain as the new director of SHIELD. Actually, this was intentional on George's part. He knew Carlson's principles and temperament. If someone else had been the director of SHIELD, engaging in bureaucratic practices, lacking common sense, and prone to moralizing and criticizing him, they might have destroyed the new SHIELD before the next crisis even arrived. "George, something terrible has happened. Aliens have invaded Earth." Carlson hadn't even stopped the car properly before he hurriedly opened the door and ran towards George. George looked surprised. "Carlson, don't panic. Explain what you mean by aliens invading Earth." Loki was king in Jotunheim, had reconciled with Thor, hadn't fallen into Thanos' hands, and had the Tesseract. Therefore, the Chitauri invasion of Earth depicted in the movies was impossible. Furthermore, the floating island was hovering over New York. If the Chitauri army had appeared, he would have noticed it long ago. "Here's the thing," Carlson then relayed all the intelligence he had just gathered to George. "Half an hour ago, satellites detected a large number of spaceships appearing outside Earth. Some of these ships suddenly became invisible, while others brazenly landed on Earth. While local governments were somewhat caught off guard by these alien ships appearing so openly without warning, they still intercepted them immediately. This is understandable. In this situation, they could only deal with the worst-case scenario. Otherwise, if it truly was an alien civilization invading Earth, letting them go unchecked would be tantamount to waiting to be occupied. Unfortunately, apart from a few major powers that intercepted and destroyed some ships, most landed successfully, and many disappeared after landing. It's estimated they used technology beyond Earth's capabilities to block the search. Worst of all, many people in various countries had already witnessed the alien ship landings, and journalists had begun reporting on them. Governments were struggling to control the situation. It wouldn't be long before panic ensued. Having no other option, he turned to George for help in finding the aliens who had invaded Earth and figuring out their motives. High-ranking officials in various countries were also on edge, fearing that an alien civilization was planning a war to invade and occupy Earth. If that were the case, Earth's technological level would make it extremely difficult to win, and the consequences of defeat would be unimaginable. A large number of alien spaceships have landed on Earth, scattered across various locations, and the types of spaceships are not uniform. George thought for a moment, then smiled and patted the anxious Carlson on the shoulder. "Don't worry, it's nothing serious. I'll handle it for you." However, the matter of setting up recruitment offices in various countries, as mentioned before, needs to be expedited. According to Coulson, these invading aliens were definitely not major powers like Thanos' army, the Nova Empire, or the Kree Empire. They were probably raiders and bounty hunters. In fact, even if it were Thanos, the Nova Empire, or the Kree Empire, he wouldn't be afraid of an invasion with his current strength. As for why so many raiders and bounty hunters had descended upon Earth, it's simple. Just capture a few, read their memories, and the truth will be clear. It's not a big deal. For him now, the only major events that could make him nervous would be something like a dimensional demon invasion. Chapter 404, a rare practical experience. Within a week, at most a week after this alien invasion is resolved, admissions offices for superpowered schools will be established in the city center of every city in every country, Coulson assured him without hesitation. An alien invasion is a matter of the safety of the entire planet, the safety of all humanity. Admissions offices are nothing. The highest levels of government in every country would definitely agree. George smiled and nodded. That's good. Establishing admissions offices in various countries, allowing all children with special abilities to apply for schooling immediately, is something Charles has been trying to do for the past few months. Not all children have the money and ability to fly from other countries to New York. However, governments around the world are naturally reluctant to have superpowered schools establish admissions offices globally. But due to the terrifying power of superpowered academies, they dare not openly refuse, and so they keep dragging it on. Charles, being good-natured, has caused this matter to drag on for months. George is aware of this, but his mind is currently focused on researching magic and alchemy, so he hasn't paid much attention. The establishment of such a large superpowered academy involves the interests of governments around the world, and there are bound to be some messy issues that arise. He can't always handle them personally. Like the admissions office, even if he doesn't intervene, it's bound to be resolved sooner or later. So, he mainly needs to control the overall direction of the school. Other matters can be handled by Charles and the teachers. However, since various governments have asked him for help, he'll conveniently resolve this small matter. Ring ring, a rapid ringing bell rang throughout the school, and all the teachers suspended their classes and gathered in the conference room. George, what happened? Logan, the last teacher to enter the conference room, asked George, who was standing at the top. George gestured to Coulson beside him, and Coulson quickly recounted the situation. Aliens, after hearing this, everyone looked surprised. Although they all possessed various powers far exceeding those of ordinary people, their understanding was still limited to Earth, and their knowledge of the outer universe was no different from that of ordinary people. Aliens are still human, maybe their technology is a bit more advanced than ours, there's no need to worry. Thor's an Asgardian, you've all been to Asgard. According to Thor, few civilizations in the universe can compare to Asgard. Seeing the slightly serious expressions on some people's faces, George waved his hand. Actually, he was right. Marvel's cosmic civilizations seem powerful, but in reality, they're not that great. Compared to Earth, their technological level in various aspects, especially spaceships and space travel, is indeed much stronger. But in terms of weaponry, you can't say they're much stronger. Individual combat weapons are fine, common laser weapons are indeed much stronger than various firearms on Earth, but weapons of mass destruction aren't that much stronger. A normal cosmic civilization is already so advanced that it should have space-based weapons that can destroy an entire planet with a single blow, but in reality, it doesn't. Ronan the Accuser needs to find the Power Stone and use its power to destroy Xander. Even upon closer examination, Earth's nuclear weapons, by cosmic standards, are among the most powerful weapons, as they were created with the help of the Eternals. The Eternals, in turn, are creations of the Celestials, who possess their knowledge and are the creators of the universe's planets. Regarding physical strength, aliens generally possess greater physical strength than ordinary Earthlings, but not to an exaggerated degree. Those like Drax the Destroyer, who can withstand bullets with their bare hands and only feel a slight itch, are rare. Most aliens are at most twice as strong as ordinary Earthlings. The legendary Asgardians are only about 3 times stronger than ordinary Earthlings. And the Asgardians are among the most physically powerful races in the universe. Therefore, under normal circumstances, alien raiders and bounty hunters, wielding advanced weaponry, are indeed beyond the capabilities of ordinary Earth police and armies. However, the situation is different for teachers and students of a superpowered academy. Take Wolverine, for example, How many of the raiders and bounty hunters in the universe could defeat him? That's true. Thinking of Thor and the people of Asgard in Asgard, everyone suddenly realized George's point. The aliens didn't seem as mysterious as they'd imagined. Perfect timing. This is a rare opportunity for the students to have real combat experience. They can't usually find so many strong enemies for real-world practice. Relying solely on simulation training rooms isn't quite enough. George began to arrange things. Each teacher will lead a team of students, and based on the alien landing location discovered by Coulson and his team, they will coordinate to capture those aliens. Professor Charles will be the main person in charge of the operation. He didn't plan to participate in this operation himself, as they were all small fry, and he had no interest in them. He'd rather spend more time researching magic. He'd leave the details to Charles. Charles had experience with the X-Men and was skilled at commanding battles. Besides, with Captain Rogers there, and with SHIELD's cooperation, Tony would definitely get involved later. He would also temporarily unlock the school's access keys, allowing them to instantly reach the desired city, or provide rapid support if they encountered any real trouble. Finally, if you encounter a situation you can't handle, press this, and I'll take care of it. George handed the specially crafted portal key to Charles, patted Coulson on the shoulder, and then parried it away. The special portal key bore his magical imprint. Once triggered, he could sense it and teleport there instantly. Mr. Coulson, please inform Tony and Thor. Those aliens have spaceships. If they try to escape, we don't have many people here who can fly, so it will be difficult to catch them. After George left, Charles first spoke with Coulson, then began having the teachers select students with compatible abilities to form teams and use the portal keys to travel to various parts of the world. The school had many magical vehicles George had specially made for the teachers, such as magical motorcycles, magical cars, magical flying carpets, and magical brooms. However, these were only suitable for daily travel between the cities below and the floating islands, not for combat. Those alien spaceships would certainly have many powerful technological weapons and be very fast. They would need something like Tony and Thor's to deal with them effectively. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 The Technological Gap. The school now boasts a formidable faculty. Besides Professor X and Wolverine from the beginning, there are later additions like Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hulk, and more recently, Inhumans such as Quake and the Eyeless Man. Following the Call incident, the Old King, representing Wakanda, formed an alliance with the school, providing various advanced technologies. Many of the school's advanced equipment on the floating islands originated from Wakanda. Therefore, Black Panther T'Challa naturally became one of the school's teachers. Daredevil, a recent graduate, also applied to be a teacher. Wolverine and several other teachers even helped him eliminate the underground Emperor Kingpin, something George knew but didn't participate in. With the superpower school's current strength, enemies like Kingpin are no longer a concern for him. As the superpower school continues to operate, many heroes will gradually become teachers and students, working together to maintain peace on Earth. He can then focus on researching magic and improving his strength to prepare for potential future crises. He believes this is the best possible state for him within the Marvel Universe. One of his main purposes in supporting and expanding the Superpower Academy was to ensure that, during his secluded research into magic, the entire Earth or even the entire universe wouldn't be suddenly destroyed. Some crises have severe consequences, but they aren't particularly difficult to resolve. For example, a terrorist attack on a city with a nuclear bomb is a crisis that most agents could handle. Therefore, he didn't need to worry about crises that the Superpower Academy could manage. He only needed to worry about the enemies and crises that the Academy couldn't handle. San Francisco, California Street. Alien friends ahead, please lay down your weapons. We humans are a peaceful race, a SHIELD agent shouted through a megaphone at a group of strangely shaped, clearly not human beings emerging from a spaceship. He was surrounded by fully armed SHIELD agents and uniformed police officers. His orders were to communicate with the aliens as amicably as possible, gathering intelligence about their arrival on Earth. If their attitude was unfriendly, he also needed to buy time for the approaching armed forces. This planet Terran is indeed, as the data shows, a low-level civilization. Look at their weapons, they're practically toys. The tall alien leader kicked a motorcycle blocking his path several meters away, pointed at the submachine guns and pistols in the hands of the humans in front of him, and couldn't help but laugh. His dozen or so team members behind him joined in the mockery. Clearly, they didn't take the planet's armed forces seriously at all. Take them out, then hack into their network. Find me the information about the Cosmic Cube as quickly as possible. There are quite a few bounty hunters this time. Although we are one of the top bounty hunter teams in the galaxy, we can't let our guard down. The alien leader waved his hand, and his dozen or so men quickly launched an attack on the agents and police surrounding them. He didn't care about the planet's native forces. What worried him were his competitors who had also accepted missions. If it were just bounty hunters, it wouldn't be so bad. The problem is there are also many raiders. The raiders are much larger than the bounty hunters. A typical bounty hunter team consists of a dozen or so people, while a raider team has at least 100. This time, the team led by Yondu, supposedly the most ruthless raider, has also taken on this mission. 10 minutes later, the SHIELD agent who had just been holding the megaphone, covered in blood, shouted into the walkie-talkie, requesting backup. Requesting backup. These aliens' firepower is too strong, we can't hold on much longer. Although they have the numerical advantage, the bullets from their guns can't penetrate the aliens' protective suits at all, and the aliens' laser guns can blow up a car with a single shot. Moreover, these aliens are incredibly fast, and their strength and reaction speed far exceed those of normal humans. After a firefight, they have suffered more than half of their casualties, while the other side hasn't even had a single wounded. Hold on. Armed helicopters are on their way, and backup will be here soon. As the reply came through the walkie-talkie, the SHIELD agent looked up and, sure enough, could vaguely see 4 helicopters approaching. There were many aliens invading Earth this time, likely in various cities, so having 4 armed helicopters in such a short time was already quite impressive. Airstrike? These aircraft are too slow. The bounty hunters also saw the approaching helicopters, but their faces were filled with disdain. Compared to the Nova Empire's police ships, this planet's outdated and almost defenseless aircraft were a joke. One of the aliens took out a special laser weapon, scanned the helicopters that hadn't yet arrived, and the weapon immediately locked onto the targets. 4 laser beams shot out, instantly destroying all 4 armed helicopters. Is this the difference in technology? The SHIELD agent, hiding behind a police car, wore a look of despair. Just then, a figure suddenly descended from the sky, its hands unleashing sharp claws that pierced through the protective suit of a bounty hunter who was immune to bullets, instantly killing him. What was that? The fastest reacting alien leader quickly raised his hand and fired a shot at the attacker. The laser gun, capable of destroying cars, pierced the attacker's chest, leaving a wrist-sized hole. But instead of feeling joy, he widened his eyes, for he saw the hole rapidly heal, and the attacker, as if unharmed, stabbed his teammate beside him with his claws. Focus fire. Blow him up. His command had barely left his lips when a dozen vines suddenly sprouted from the ground, binding them tightly. Perfect timing. Nathan, the attacker, having finished off another alien, praised the boy whose hands were pressed to the ground. Indeed, they were one of the Superhuman Academy's combat training squads, having just arrived in San Francisco using the portkey and then responding to a request for help. The team was led by Wolverine, and the boy assisting him was one of the mutant children they had rescued years ago. Professor Logan, they're incredibly strong. My vines won't last much longer, the boy shouted, feeling his vines being forcibly broken. It's alright, Nathan, I'm here. At that moment, a girl appeared floating above the boy, carrying an onboard machine gun, already aimed at the group of aliens below. The girl's name was Jessica, and she possessed both flight and divine strength. Chapter 406 Why are humans so powerful? Rat-a-tat-tat-tat, Jessica, wielding a massive machine gun typically found on helicopters, unleashed a furious barrage of fire on the alien invaders bound by vines. This showed the surviving police officers below and the fearless citizens around, recording and live streaming on their phones, what a true violent little girl was, and what extreme contrast meant. These aliens could ignore the bullets from the police and agents because those bullets couldn't penetrate their high-tech protective suits, and their reaction time and movement speed were so fast that they could avoid many vital attacks, such as unprotected heads. However, that didn't mean they could take bullets with their bare hands unscathed, especially from a machine gun. Not every alien was Drax the Destroyer. So, after a burst of fire, Except for the leader who had broken free of the vines, all the other invading bounty hunters were killed, their heads blown off. Many students at the superpowered school had experienced life and death, especially the first group of mutant children, and the school deliberately trained them in this area. Therefore, they weren't afraid to kill. How could this be? Humans can't be this strong. The surviving leader was terrified. He abandoned any thought of attacking and rushed towards his spaceship at top speed, determined to escape this dangerous planet. The strength of the 3 newly arrived humans was undeniable, even among raiders and bounty hunters. The data on this planet was definitely wrong. Unfortunately, he hadn't gone far before Wolverine intercepted him. Mr. Logan, capture them alive, try to capture them alive. We need to find out why they came to Earth. The SHIELD agent, seeing the situation reversed, quickly stood up and shouted to Wolverine. The same thing was happening in many other cities on Earth. Those bounty hunters and raiders who had arrived on Earth with such ferocity were quickly subdued by the teachers and students of the superpowered academies. Those who were slightly more difficult were also easily overwhelmed and dealt with thanks to the timely support of the portkeys. In reality, there weren't any particularly troublesome aliens. Truly capable and intelligent invaders chose to infiltrate secretly using their technological advantages, never resorting to such blatant incursions. Therefore, the alien invaders discovered by SHIELD weren't particularly difficult enemies for the teachers and students of the Superpower Academy. They were merely more technologically advanced. Some, frightened, attempted to escape in their spaceships, but Tony and Thor intercepted them. In less than a day, all the aliens and alien spaceships that had openly invaded Earth were dealt with. Most were killed on the spot due to fierce resistance, while a small number were captured alive and brought back to SHIELD for interrogation by professors. A bunch of idiots. I knew there was something wrong with $1 billion bounty. If it were that simple, why didn't the employer come looking for them themselves? Beside a cell tower in a remote suburb, Rocket Raccoon connected to the tower with his homemade device and watched the video circulating online of George transforming into a dragon to fight the cosmic serpent. He couldn't help but mock them. He then proceeded to hack into classified documents from various countries, searching for information about the Tesseract. The humans of planet Terran are not so simple. There are many terrifying beings among them. The battle between the dragon and the serpent in the video alone terrified him. Fortunately, he discovered that the planet's technological level was indeed not high, just as the data suggested. As one of the most brilliant inventors in the universe, hacking into this world's network to find the information he wanted was a piece of cake. His goal wasn't to fight the humans of this planet, but to obtain the Tesseract to exchange for a bounty. If he couldn't win, he could steal it. He'd done that countless times before. Tesseract. Red Skull. Hydra. SHIELD Superpower Academy. George. This planet is really something. By hacking into the classified files of various countries, he quickly found a lot of information about the Tesseract and gained a deeper understanding of the dangers of Earth. Judging from this, it's speculated that George took the Tesseract. It seems that to complete the mission, I need to find a way to infiltrate that floating city. From the time Nick Fury was killed until its reorganization, most of SHIELD's intelligence had been obtained by high-ranking officials of various countries, especially the United States government, which had obtained almost all of the intelligence. Therefore, information about the Cosmic Cube naturally exists. Regarding the disappearance of the Cosmic Cube after the destruction of Hydra, various forces have analyzed and speculated, with a conclusion that there's a 70% chance it has fallen into the hands of George from the Superpower Academy. However, given the strength of George and the Superpower Academy, even if the speculation is true, they dare not try to reclaim it. Superpower Academy, truly troublesome. In New York, Gamora stood on the rooftop of a building, looking down at the group of bounty hunters defeated and captured by the shield-wielding human and his children, and frowned. She had arrived on this planet earlier than anyone else and had already obtained sufficient intelligence through disguise and espionage. Now, she had verified this intelligence through these foolish bounty hunters and raiders. It seems I need to find a way to obtain an Earthling identity and enter the Superpower Academy. Should I choose to be a teacher or a student? According to her instruments, the Cosmic Cube is located in the floating city above New York. There are only 2 ways to safely enter the floating city: apply to become a teacher at the Superpower Academy or become a student there. Anyway, this planet has mutants and humans who have gained abilities through various accidental mutations. As long as she gets a human identity, she can disguise herself as a mutant human and openly enter the floating city by applying for a teacher position. With the instrument that can pinpoint the location of the Tesseract, she can quickly find it and leave the planet. In a room in a small town in Missouri. The situation is worse than we expected. Even if we all go out of our way, we probably can't deal with this human who can transform into a dragon. So, it's mainly up to you now, Peter. Yondu patted Peter on the shoulder. Peter replied impatiently, up to me? What can I do? I told you I didn't want to come here, but you insisted on dragging me. Wouldn't it be better to come and see your only relative on Earth? Peter, you've been running away. Running away won't solve anything, it will only make you weaker. Yondu grabbed Peter by the neck and said. Besides, this time you don't have a choice. Only you are from this planet and know it better than us. If you can complete the bounty this time, you can take 100 million of the 10 billion bounty. Chapter 407 Galactic Spy Team. What? For the Tesseract, George put down the magical artifact he was making, his face showing surprise upon hearing Charles's report. Charles had used his telepathic abilities to read the memories of the captured aliens and learn the real reason for the invasion of Earth by so many aliens. So he immediately came to report to George. As a core member of the Superpower Academy, he was one of the few teachers who knew that George used the Tesseract as an emergency energy source for the floating island. $1 billion bounty for the Tesseract on Earth. Who would do that? Is it a collector? After Charles left, George fell into deep thought. This incident was not in his memory, at least not in the movies, so he couldn't find out who the mastermind was through his past life's memories. But according to his understanding, there weren't many in the universe who could afford $1 billion bounty. They were mostly large powers. First, he ruled out the Nova Empire and the Kree Empire. If they wanted the Tesseract, they wouldn't choose to offer a bounty, they would simply send a fleet to Earth. Second, not many people knew of the Tesseract's existence, or knew that it was on Earth. So, his first thought was the collector of the universe. The collector was incredibly wealthy, even willing to spend $4 billion to buy the Orb of Destiny, and also coveted the other Infinity Stones. It wasn't impossible that he would offer a $10 billion bounty for the Tesseract. However, after some thought, he ruled that out. The collector had connections with Asgard, knew of its existence, and knew that Odin had placed the Tesseract on Earth. If he did this, he would be going against Odin. Moreover, as one of the longest living beings in the universe, he couldn't possibly be unaware of the Ancient One and the Sorcerer Supreme's presence on Earth. If he truly disregarded these things, he wouldn't have waited until now. Excluding the collector, that leaves only one. George raised an eyebrow, already guessing the mastermind behind the bounty. Thanos. According to the movie's plot, at this point, Thanos used Loki to incite the Chitauri army to invade Earth, testing Odin and the Ancient One to seize the Tesseract. But because of his appearance, everything had changed. However, Thanos' desire for the Tesseract remains unchanged. Offering $1 billion bounty to send these bounty hunters and raiders to Earth to probe its defenses and seize the Tesseract is plausible. Forget it, let's wait and see. Although he guessed Thanos was the mastermind, he didn't intend to do anything. He'd eliminate as many bounty hunters and raiders as they came. Once they realized the danger to Earth, they wouldn't dare come again. The Superpower Academy could handle it without his intervention, so it wouldn't affect him. The main problem was finding Thanos, otherwise, he wouldn't mind addressing the root of the problem now, eliminating Thanos directly and avoiding future Thanos invasions. With his current strength, he had a high chance of defeating Thanos and his fleet, who only possessed one Infinity Stone. The universe was vast, and Thanos' fleet was constantly on the move. They wouldn't necessarily stay on Titan. With bad luck, it might take years to find them. That would be a waste of time. It was better to focus on studying magic and wait for them to come to him. Unless someone could lead him directly to Thanos, he might consider it. His existence had caused many changes, and he couldn't guarantee Thanos' strength when he invaded Earth. If Thanos only obtained a few Infinity Stones, that would be fine. But if he created a Thanos with the heart of the universe, it would be troublesome. In the following days, the Superpower Academy, in cooperation with the new SHIELD and various governments, successively captured some hidden aliens and seized complete spaceships capable of interstellar travel. Through interrogation of these aliens, they quickly figured out how to pilot those spaceships. The world's top scientists also began researching these alien weapons and spaceships, hoping to obtain more advanced technology to detect even deeper hidden aliens. Perhaps because most of the invading bounty hunters and raiders had been dealt with, those who arrived later were much more cautious, no longer openly landing on Earth. George ignored these important matters in the eyes of various countries and did not interfere. If those scientists could truly advance Earth's technology by studying alien technology, even enabling them to leave Earth and make contact with other civilizations, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. A common enemy fosters greater unity. Humanity has always been like this. Knowing about extraterrestrial civilizations and extraterrestrial wars, nations will no longer fight amongst themselves over Earth's resources, but will instead unite against external threats. As for the potential dangers of contact with other civilizations in the universe, he actually felt that some of the dangers of the universe were perhaps less than the internal dangers of Earth, the planet that gave birth to countless ancient gods. He thought about his previous speculation that this universe belonged to the Black Strange, and how many people in the universe could single-handedly destroy an entire universe. He studied magic, experimented with alchemy, and day after day, steadily accumulating strength. A month after the alien invasion, things had completely calmed down outside. That day, the professor sent George a telepathic message. Recently, several people have come to the school to apply for teaching and security positions. Their resumes seem quite good. Today is their first day of interviews on the island. Okay, I'll go check it out, George replied telepathically. He generally didn't interfere much with students entering the school, because after graduation, students might not stay, they might choose to be ordinary people or join some faction. He only paid extra attention to those who graduated and stayed on at the university, secretly checking their memories. However, he would definitely investigate every teacher and staff member who entered the school. Teachers were already part of the school's management and had access to many of its secrets. Staff members handle many miscellaneous tasks related to student safety. Professor X could actually do this kind of background investigation, but he disliked checking people's memories without their consent, especially if that person might be a future colleague. So he usually did it himself. Besides, as the principal, how could he not get to know the new teachers and staff? However, when he arrived at the principal's office and saw the documents Professor X handed him, he couldn't help but laugh. What? The Galactic Spy Team? He recognized several people based on their photos, abilities, and names in the documents. They were most likely Gamora, Star-Lord, Yondu, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot. Chapter 408 Earth Migration Plan. Gamora, Star-Lord, and Rocket Raccoon applied for the job of teacher, Yondu applied for security guard, and Groot applied for gardener. Gamora's photo used a black person's skin tone, and her abilities were described as having naturally strong physical abilities, being proficient in martial arts, especially short swords, and coming from a very, very remote city. Initially, this information wouldn't have made George suspect she was Gamora. However, seeing that the name listed was indeed Gamora, and recalling his previous speculation about Thanos and the abilities this guy had displayed, how could he not be suspicious? Indeed, there are many people with the name Gamora, especially here on Earth. Even a raider like Star-Lord doesn't know Gamora, so it's impossible for anyone on Earth to know that name. The second Star-Lord's address was his original home location on Earth, but it had clearly been tampered with. There were no records of his disappearance. His abilities were described as superhuman physical abilities and fluency in various Earth languages. As for his name, it was also unchanged, listed as Peter Quill. Star-Lord is a half-human, half-celestial hybrid. Even without awakening celestial powers, his physique surpasses the limits of a normal Earthling, otherwise, he wouldn't be doing so well among the raiders and even holding his own against Gamora. His fluency in various Earth languages strongly suggests he's using some kind of high-tech translation machine. Yondu, listed as Star-Lord's uncle, possesses the ability to control metal arrows with a whistle. Rocket Raccoon claims to be a mutant who has undergone a transformation, with a highly enhanced brain, demonstrating his inventive and improvement abilities. He says Groot is his brother, also a mutant who has undergone a transformation, but is less intelligent and mute. Many mutants and inhumans undergo significant physical changes after awakening their abilities, transforming into raccoons or geese. It's not entirely impossible. Therefore, this explanation didn't raise any suspicions for people like Charles and Logan. Interesting. Look at you bunch of clowns, how are you planning to steal the Tesseract? The appearance of the Galactic Spy Team brought an amusing little interlude to George's magical research. To be honest, the goofy Guardians of the Galaxy from his past life were among his favorite Marvel movies. Gamora's arrival gave him a new plan. As Thanos' most beloved adopted daughter, to whom he had even given his heart, Gamora could definitely contact Thanos and know his location. Furthermore, the recent alien invasion brought many spaceships, and he felt he could perhaps spend some time traveling to space to nip Thanos and his fleet in the bud. Just as he had previously thought, who knew what developments the Dark Universe would bring, and with him constantly flapping his wings, who knew what unexpected changes might occur? Eliminating future threats with minimal cost, when conditions allowed, was very much in line with his personality. The key was that Thanos' situation was quite special. If you knew in advance that someone would kill in the future but hadn't yet, you'd feel guilty killing them to prevent it from happening. But killing Thanos wouldn't leave him with any psychological burden. Because the current Thanos had already killed countless lives in the universe. Thanos conquers a planet, randomly wiping out half of its life. No one in the universe has killed more people than Thanos. This alien invasion gave him another plan, the Earth migration plan. Thanos used the Infinity Stones to eliminate half of the universe's life, but simultaneously resolved a major crisis for Earth. After the universe's birth, most galaxies and planets were created by the Celestials. Like diligent bees, they continuously strengthened the universe, guiding it towards healthy development. However, the birth of a new celestial required the sacrifice of a planet and all life on it. For the universe as a whole, this was naturally a good thing, as more celestials could create more stars and planets. But this was somewhat unfair to the sacrificed planets and their inhabitants. Coincidentally, a celestial was also gestating at Earth's core. Once Earth's population reached a certain size, it would absorb all life on Earth to hatch, leading to Earth's destruction. In some parts of the Marvel Universe, Thanos' Titan was destroyed because of the Celestials' incubation. Thanos also wiped out half the universe's population to prevent the Celestials' birth. He doesn't know the details of this particular universe, but if he had killed Thanos earlier and prevented the disappearance of half Earth's population, the Celestial embryo would definitely have hatched within a few years. The Earth migration plan was designed to resolve this crisis. Since he was going to deal with Thanos, he might as well make contact with the Nova Empire to see if they could send people to Earth ahead of time, allowing Earth to transition to a spacefaring civilization sooner. Once Earth and the universe are connected, many humans would likely be willing to migrate to more advanced and prosperous planets. This would significantly reduce Earth's population, indirectly slowing down the Celestials' incubation. The Celestials are different from Thanos. Some are at the level of the Celestial Fathers, while others are at the multiverse level. He doesn't want to have any conflict with the Celestials unless absolutely necessary. At least not now, his current strength is insufficient to contend with them. Apparition. Retrieving the Tesseract from the core of the floating island, George teleported to his principal's office. The Tesseract was key to the teleportation and supersonic flight of this massive floating island, but even without its power source, the island could still fly. However, the energy absorbed by the various magic arrays alone wasn't enough to sustain its speed. Using a transfiguration charm, he conjured a shelf with the words Tesseract written on it and placed it on his desk. Then, he placed the Tesseract he'd brought from the core on the shelf and telepathically told Professor X, "Let those 5 in." A moment later, the door opened, and Gamora, Star-Lord, Yondu, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot entered. When they saw the Tesseract on George's desk, their pupils constricted, and they instinctively wanted to raise their hands, but quickly suppressed the urge and averted their gaze. Behind that desk sat the most terrifying being on the planet, George, the principal of the Superpower Academy, a terrifying figure capable of transforming into a monster several kilometers tall. It's estimated that only the Kree Sentinel Corps of the Kree Empire could possibly contend with such a monster. The Kree Sentinel Corps is the most powerful weapon of the Kree Empire. Each Kree Sentinel is a kilometer tall and can easily destroy a typical spaceship. Chapter 409 Slave Contract. Sit down, don't be shy. George waved his hand, and 5 chairs appeared out of thin air in front of the desk, causing the 5 men to raise an eyebrow. They had never seen this ability to conjure things out of thin air in the universe. What would you like to drink? Tea, a soft drink, or cola? Haven't had it in a while. I mean, carbonated drinks are fattening, so I rarely drink them anymore. Star-Lord had only answered halfway when he immediately realized a loophole in his words and quickly added, "Cola, cola, cola." I'm Groot. Apart from Star-Lord, a native Earthling, the other 4 didn't know much about Earth's drinks, so they simply chose the same ones. The intelligence they had gathered these past few days was mostly classified and important information, such as how many countries, how many forces, how many languages, and what kind of identity would be suitable to forge. They didn't have time to learn how many kinds of food and drinks this planet had, or their names and tastes. George smiled and didn't expose them, waving his hand again to conjure 5 more drinks, which floated in front of the 5 men. I've reviewed your applications, and they meet our Superpower Academy's recruitment standards perfectly. The professor should have already explained the salary and benefits to you. Do you have any further questions? No, I'm very satisfied with the offer from the professor, Gamora said first. Her goal was simply to stay on this floating island, even for just one night, because she now knew the location of the Tesseract without needing any instruments to search. So she didn't care about the treatment. She had tried to sneak into the floating island recently, but no matter what she used, even with the guidance of instruments specifically designed to locate the Tesseract, she couldn't get close. Us too, Yondu said with a smile that clearly wasn't very kind. Rocket Raccoon glanced at the Tesseract on the table, suppressing his usual foul mouth, and nodded along with Groot. Seeing this, George waved his hand again, and 5 contracts appeared on the table. If there are no problems, then put your fingerprints on them. Given Rocket Raccoon and Groot's special circumstances, he thoughtfully changed the signature to a fingerprint. Just as the 5 were about to press their fingerprints, George spoke again. A special reminder, you can read the last clause of the contract before deciding. Once you join the Superpower Academy and become an employee, if you do anything detrimental to the Academy has the right to execute you without the permission of any government. If the circumstances are not serious, such as theft, the death penalty may be avoided, but you will be a lifelong employee of the school without any salary or benefits. Isn't that slavery? Star-Lord couldn't help but retort. George smiled kindly. Yes, slavery. That's why you should carefully read the contract. If you can't accept it, you can choose to give up. Governments around the world have changed their attitude towards those with superpowers. The treatment is good, and you can work for them. Looking at George's smile, the group subconsciously had a bad feeling, but after swallowing hard, they still pressed their fingerprints. They weren't really applying to be teachers. As long as they stole the Tesseract tonight, they would escape this planet. Could George really chase them all the way to space? Very good, then from today onwards, you are officially on the job. Professor Logan will show you around the school in a bit, arrange your dorms, and show you how to enter and leave the floating islands. You can start working once you've settled in. George put away the 5 contracts, then smiled and dismissed the 5 men from the office. Very good, 5 freshly minted little slaves, newcomers, follow me. I'll take you to your dorms first, then show you around the school. Wolverine, summoned by George's telepathy, puffed on his cigar and waved to the 5 men leaving the office. Gamora swayed her hips and patted Wolverine's chest, laughing. Thank you very much, Professor Logan. As the universe's top spy, she was adept at using her beauty to attract men and obtain intelligence. Besides, Professor Logan was indeed quite her type, very masculine. Oh, it's a bit hot today. Star-Lord, seeing this, immediately took off his jacket, revealing his rather good physique in just a vest. Beautiful Gamora, after you've seen the dorms, would you mind if I joined you for lunch at the cafeteria? Sorry, you're not my type. Gamora rejected Star-Lord's invitation without hesitation, then walked side by side with Logan. The teacher, who had also applied for the job, wasn't worth extracting information from. There was no need to waste time. It was better to spend more time with the school's senior staff to get more information. Ho ha, this is so embarrassing. He's a heartthrob, and you're just one bowl of rice away from being obese. Rocket Raccoon looked at the disheveled Star-Lord and laughed mercilessly. Star-Lord, enraged, immediately ripped open his vest, pointed at his abs, and roared, "Abs! See that? 8-pack abs. You blind little panda, he's not a little panda, he's a raccoon," Logan corrected Star-Lord, then said to Gamora beside him, "If you've heard of me, you should know I'm older than your grandfather, kid. Don't forget the important thing. That new guy isn't helping us. If you want to pick up girls, use your skills to get information from an older employee." "I think that one's pretty good." Yondu pulled Star-Lord, who was arguing with Rocket, close and pointed to a female teacher in a black uniform with long, red, wavy hair. Star-Lord's eyes lit up when he saw the female teacher, and he immediately stepped forward to strike up a conversation. "Hey, beautiful, my name is Peter, I'm a new teacher. Could you show me around the school and then we can have lunch together? Natasha, Logan will show you around. I have class. Everyone eats lunch together in the cafeteria. Black Widow smiled politely at Star-Lord's advances and left. That afternoon, George received a warning from Black Widow. Those new Peter and Yondu seem a bit suspicious. At lunchtime, Star-Lord's seemingly casual approach was actually an attempt to gather information, and as a top spy, how could she not notice something amiss? George replied, "It's alright, I know they're suspicious. All 5 of them are suspicious. You don't need to do anything, they're all under my control." He built the entire floating island, and he personally set up all the magic arrays. As long as he connected his mind to the island's magic arrays, everything on the floating island was within his mental perception. Chapter 410 Goal, The Stars and the Sea. Late at night, in the staff dormitory of the Superpower Academy. While everyone was asleep, several furtive figures slipped out of their rooms. Following the routes they had scouted during the day, they headed towards the principal's office in the school's academic building. All of this, of course, was under George's surveillance. "Shouldn't we leave them alone?" Professor X asked George with some doubt in the school's main conference room. With his telepathic abilities, he could sense everything happening in the school, including the restless newcomers, just like George. "No need. Let them cause trouble. Let's talk business first." George looked down at the entire faculty, including the newly summoned director of SYNOPSIS, Coulson. "First, I know who posted the bounty. Tomorrow I'll leave Earth to deal with this bounty hunter. Once that's done, there won't be any more bounty hunters and raiders causing trouble on Earth." Interesting. "I'm going to." Hearing that George was leaving Earth, many teachers immediately showed interest, wanting to go with him. They weren't worried at all about whether George could handle the bounty hunter. Just a few days ago, Thor mentioned during his visit to the school that with George's strength, no civilization in the entire universe would dare to provoke him. Even Odin, the father god, spoke highly of George. "Not now. After I leave, I need you to protect Earth from any accidents. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of opportunities to visit other civilizations in the universe later." "That's the second thing I wanted to mention." George turned his gaze to Coulson, who was taken aback. "Coulson, this second matter mainly requires your attention." "George, tell me, I'll do my best." Coulson immediately sat up straight and nodded. As the new director of SYLD, he represented the interests of all human nations on Earth, and he was willing to do anything that benefited humanity. Currently, George's work was primarily beneficial to humanity, so he was willing to use all his abilities to cooperate. Besides dealing with the bounty hunters, I'll also contact the current ruling empire of the galaxy, the New Star Empire, and have them send people to Earth to connect with humanity and guide us into the space age. So, during my absence, you need to coordinate with the leaders of various countries, develop corresponding plans in advance, and conduct various forms of publicity. Bringing humanity into the space age definitely requires the cooperation of all nations. Without prior arrangements, who knows what unexpected problems might arise? He wouldn't waste his precious time dealing with such trivial matters. He'd leave that to Coulson. He'd just talk to the emerging empire after dealing with Thanos, acting as a facilitator. What? Towards the space age? Isn't that taking a bit too big a step? Everyone's faces showed surprise upon hearing George's words, with Coulson even expressing his doubts. The issue of extraterrestrial civilizations had been discussed in meetings by high-ranking officials from various countries for the past few days. After all, it was a major event that could affect the entire Earth and humanity. Arguably, nothing was more important at the moment. The higher-ups were also considering whether to try to make contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, learn more advanced technologies, and lead human civilization to the stars. The final conclusion was naturally yes, but not now. Compared to extraterrestrial civilizations, Earth civilization was too underdeveloped, and the public probably wouldn't accept it so easily in the short term. Taking too big a step might backfire. It was better to first study the extraterrestrial technologies they had acquired, then gradually improve and slowly make contact with them. This was a safer and more secure approach. Otherwise, they feared being wiped out by other civilizations as soon as they ventured out. Moreover, through interrogating raiders and bounty hunters, they knew that the outer universe wasn't peaceful either. The Nova Empire, the Kree Empire, and the Skrull Empire were constantly at war. A low-level civilization like Earth was as insignificant as dust in such cosmic warfare. Coulson, you're right, but there's something you might not know. We must make contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, and we must prioritize the project of Earth's colonization to live on other planets." George shook his head, preparing to reveal the whole story about the celestial embryo. He felt there was no point in hiding it. Letting humanity know about the crisis and the fear would unite them, unite governments against external threats, and save him trouble. More importantly, this would make high-ranking officials in various countries understand the importance of George's top-tier combat power and the importance of the Superpower Academy. It would save them a lot of unnecessary trouble, though not much trouble for him, but dealing with it would still waste his time researching magic. If things continued this way, George would become like a nuclear weapon for all of humanity, someone humanity needed to rely on. All of humanity would understand that only with George could Earth, this low-level civilization, stand among the major civilizations in the universe, instead of being captured and enslaved mining on various planets. Earth immigrants to live on other planets. Callison was dumbfounded again. How did things escalate from contacting extraterrestrial civilizations to immigration? Wasn't that something to be done last? Because if Earth's population continues to grow at this rate, in just a few years, Earth and all of humanity will be destroyed. George looked at the astonished crowd below and explained everything about the Celestials who create stars and planets, their birth process, and the celestial embryo at Earth's core. The crowd remained speechless for a long time afterward. The major civilizations in the universe were already facing enough problems. This celestial group was simply unsolvable. "George, even you can't deal with the Celestials?" Callison finally couldn't help but ask. In his mind, George, who could transform into a 5 or 6,000 meter tall dragon, was even more powerful than the gods of mythology. At least not now. "I can fight the weak ones, but I definitely can't beat the strong ones, and their group." "So, Callison, you decide how to talk to the higher-ups about this. But remember, time is limited. Immigration should be done as soon as possible. No one can guarantee when Earth's population will reach the red line." George gave a final reminder. In the cinematic universe, normally, it would take about 6 more years for Earth's population to meet the conditions for the celestial embryos to awaken. But this isn't the cinematic universe. Who knows when that will happen? Maybe a year or 2, maybe a decade or more. So naturally, the sooner the better. Chapter 411 Two Choices. After the meeting, George teleported to his principal's office, which was also bustling with activity. 3 groups were locked in a fierce battle for the Tesseract. Gamora, Rocket Raccoon and Groot, and Star-Lord and Yondu were the 3 sides, with Yondu and Star-Lord's side being the strongest. Yondu's whistle arrows were incredibly powerful, while Star-Lord, though not exceptionally skilled in hand-to-hand combat, was adept at using various technological weapons to aid in battle. However, Gamora, as the universe's strongest spy, possessed a significantly enhanced body and superb close combat abilities. Groot, with his considerable strength, defense, and control, and Rocket Raccoon, with his exceptional intelligence and agility, were also formidable opponents. In this 3-way battle, if one side obtained the Tesseract, the other 2 would join forces. As a result, the battle had yet to determine a winner. Most importantly, in a superpowered academy filled with ability users, and with the principal being a powerful monster, they dared not cause too much of a disturbance, exercising considerable restraint in their fight for the Tesseract. "Stop. We'll all be discovered if this continues. Listen to me, I have a suggestion." While Yondu was preoccupied with Groot and Star-Lord was fighting Rocket Raccoon, Gamora snatched the Tesseract again, but she didn't run away. Knowing the 4 of them would turn on her again, she shouted for the fight to stop. "Little girl, I'm not afraid of your crazy foster father. Hand over the Tesseract, and you can leave here alive today." Yondu pointed his whistle at Gamora, his eyes filled with murderous intent. On the other side, Rocket Raccoon, perched on Groot's shoulder, pointed his gun at Gamora and said just as rudely, "Hey, you crazy woman, put down what you're holding, or I'll blast you to pieces." It'll be quite amusing for the headmaster to walk into his office tomorrow and see a room full of green. "Don't get excited, listen to me," Gamora said, raising her hand to calm the 4. "To tell you the truth, the person who issued the bounty is Thanos. Even if you get the Tesseract, you won't get the bounty because you'll just snap your necks. But we can cooperate. I know a buyer who's willing to pay $4 billion for the Tesseract. We'll go together. I'll take $1 billion, and you 2 will each take $1.5 billion. That's $5 billion more than the original $1 billion. How about it, The bounty hunter is the Mad Titan Thanos. Hearing Gamora's information, the three hesitated. You're Thanos' daughter? How can we believe you? I'm an adopted daughter. He killed half our planet's inhabitants, including my parents, and trained me to kill constantly, modifying my body. Believe me, I hate him more than anyone else. I want to kill him, but he's too powerful. So I'm going to get this Tesseract, and then use the money from selling it to escape him far away, no longer being controlled by him, Gamora roared angrily. If you're willing, you can keep the Tesseract. I'll take you to find a buyer. She placed the Tesseract on the ground and took a few steps back. Seeing that Gamora didn't seem to be lying, Star-Lord immediately put away his elemental gun. Yondu, I don't think she's lying. If it's true, you're quite good. If you're willing, you can join my Raiders team. Yondu also put away his whistle. Rocket Raccoon jumped off road. If that's the case, I can accept it. But I must keep the Tesseract for now. Yondu has the entire Raiders team behind him, the strongest, and Gamora knows how to contact the buyer's crucial information. Only he and Grodd are irreplaceable. Therefore, they must hold the Tesseract to maintain balance. Yondu, Star-Lord, and Gamora looked at each other and finally nodded, clearly agreeing to Rocket Raccoon's request. With the three parties in agreement, Rocket Raccoon stepped forward to pick up the Tesseract. However, at that moment, a hand grabbed the Tesseract before him. Oh dear, it seems you've forgotten the contract you signed this morning. What do you think we should do now? Should I kill you? Or, the one who appeared and took the Tesseract was none other than George, who had been watching the show from the sidelines. Not good. Seeing George appear, the group was immediately shocked and launched an attack on him. They were not ones to sit idly by and wait to be killed. Even though they had read the intelligence about George, they would not surrender at this moment. Yondu was the fastest. With a whistle, the whistle arrow transformed into a red streak, heading straight for George's vitals. However, before the arrow even touched George's skin, it seemed to be stopped by an invisible force, then changed direction and arrived at Yondu's forehead at an even faster speed, no matter how much he whistled. The whistle arrow was made of metal, and although it was alien metal, it was still subject to magnetic control, naturally unable to harm George. With George's current level, comparable to Magneto, counter-controlling the whistle arrow was incredibly easy. Next to Yondu were Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon, who pulled out their elemental guns and laser guns, ready to fire, but before they could even aim, their weapons flew out and pointed at themselves. The elemental guns and laser guns also contained metal and were similarly subject to magnetic control. On the other side, Gamora's short sword was also forcibly released from her hand and placed against her own neck. Grodd, the only one not affected by metal, had his branch retract automatically before it could even entangle George, instead wrapping around himself instead. It was George who simultaneously activated the magic he had learned from the elves to control plants and trees, seizing control of Grodd's body. In a mere second, all five attacked simultaneously, only to be instantly subdued by George. Headmaster, don't kill us. Let's talk this out. Let's talk this out. We were just out of curiosity, taking a walk at night. We had no other intentions. Star-Lord, seeing the elemental gun hovering above his head, shamelessly raised his hands, trying to justify himself. George, however, smiled and returned to his headmaster's seat, holding the Tesseract in his hand. Actually, I've been here the whole time, and I heard everything you said, so there's no need for further excuses. What do you want? Yondu asked, cold sweat beading on his forehead. If he didn't handle things well today, he might be finished. It's not what I want, it's what you want. I'm giving you two choices. First, I kill you all, and that's the end of it. Second, according to the contracts you signed, become unpaid laborers for the school, working for the school for life. With a wave of his hand, the 5 contracts signed that morning reappeared on his desk. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412 The Superpowered Guardians are established. I choose option 2. Star-Lord immediately raised his hand. He wasn't one to keep his promises, so he'd agree now and find a chance to escape later. He had legs to run, and they couldn't watch him forever. After making his choice, he immediately signaled to Yondu, who also nodded and chose option 2, survival first. We choose option 2 too. Rocket Raccoon, with his exceptionally high IQ, couldn't possibly misunderstand the key point. He had successfully escaped from prison 20 times, what kind of prison hadn't he seen in space? He was confident he could escape this floating island prison, return to his carefree life, and maybe even find a chance to steal the Tesseract and make a fortune. Only Gamora didn't answer immediately. Instead, she frowned. Her IQ wasn't the highest among them, but as one of the universe's top spies, her intuition was the strongest. She had a feeling things weren't so simple. They were all aliens. Wasn't George worried about them getting into trouble if they stayed at the school? And George's smile always seemed somewhat malicious. I choose the second option, although something felt wrong. At this moment, if she didn't want to die, she had no other choice. Seeing this, George burst into laughter. Very good, a wise choice. From today onwards, you will be called the Superpowered Guardians, and you will be responsible for liaison between the school and extraterrestrial civilizations. Tomorrow, leave Earth with me, leave Earth. Hearing George's words, the four were stunned. They hadn't expected that the first thing George wanted them to do was leave Earth. Yes, Gamora, you're Thanos' adopted daughter, you should be able to contact him and find out which planet he's on. We'll set off for him tomorrow, take him down first, and then do the rest. Now, you can go back to your dorms and rest. George finished instructing Gamora, then apparated away with the Tesseract, leaving the four stunned. Why four? Because Groot was preoccupied with why his tree branch wasn't under his control and hadn't paid any attention to what George said. The next day, after saying goodbye to Professor X and the others, George led the five of them on Star-Lord's ship and left Earth. They were going to the Marauder base ship stationed outside, and then use the ship's communication equipment to contact Thanos, find out his location, and then set off to find him. Headmaster, I hope you'll reconsider carefully. Thanos isn't as simple as you think, and he's not alone. He has many powerful subordinates and a massive fleet that even the major empires fear. On Star-Lord's ship, Gamora tried to persuade George. Having watched the video of George's fight with Clover, she knew George was powerful, but she felt Thanos was even more powerful because Thanos wasn't a single person. She had never dared to dream of killing Thanos for revenge. Her only thought was how to escape Thanos' control. Star-Lord and the others also had worries on their faces. That was the Mad Titan Thanos. If they went to fight him head-on, and George lost, they would all die. Don't worry, I have a foolproof plan. I can definitely take down Thanos. George leaned back in his seat on the spaceship, gazing at the beautiful starry sky outside, and waved dismissively. It was understandable that Gamora and the others lacked confidence in him. At their level, they couldn't possibly discern the difference in strength between him and Thanos. Nor did they understand that at a certain level of power, numbers became meaningless. Moreover, they had only seen his battle with Cure through videos, never experiencing it firsthand. It's like seeing Godzilla on TV versus standing at Godzilla's feet in real life. The difference in awe is night and day. I have a foolproof plan. Hearing George's reply, the others breathed a slight sigh of relief. Perhaps it wasn't impossible. However, if they knew that George's so-called foolproof plan was simply to find Thanos' fleet, charge straight in, and wipe them all out, they probably wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Half an hour later, Star-Lord's Raider ship entered Yondu's base ship. Boss, did you succeed? Who are they? The Raiders on the base ship, seeing Yondu and Star-Lord appear, immediately swarmed around excitedly. But when they saw George and Gamora, their faces showed confusion. Before Yondu could speak, George stepped forward and said, "From today onwards, this ship is under my control. Your leader Yondu will obey my orders from now on, and you must obey mine as well. Who do you think you are? Why should we obey your orders? You're just like that kid Peter, a Iranian. I've never eaten a Iranian before. I'll stew you today." The burly, electric-faced man, upon hearing George's words, burst into unrestrained laughter as if he'd heard a joke. However, the next second, a beam of green light struck him, and his entire body and soul turned to dust and vanished on the spot. "I don't like ugly, talkative guys." George withdrew his hand, a cold smile spreading across his face. Were the Raiders good people? Of course not. Don't be fooled by their banner of fighting for freedom. They've committed countless acts of arson, murder, and looting. Killing any one of them would be considered an act of justice. Moreover, Yondu's group was even worse than other Raider groups, because some truly wicked individuals joined precisely because Yondu broke the Raiders' rule against trafficking children. However, George didn't care about any of that, it wasn't his business anyway. He was doing this simply to establish his authority, to let these guys know who the boss was now. If they didn't submit, they would die, it was that simple. "You bastard," the desperados below, startled by George's seemingly effortless annihilation of Electroface, didn't back down. They drew their weapons, ready to attack George. The result was obvious. George simply raised a finger, and all their weapons flew from their hands, pointing at them. 20 billion volts, a burst of high-voltage electricity erupted from George, instantly electrocuting all the raiders, their mouths steaming as they collapsed to the ground. "Yondu, tell them again who's in charge of this ship. From today onwards, George is the boss of this ship. George's orders are my orders, and they must be obeyed." A bead of cold sweat appeared on Yondu's forehead as he stepped forward and shouted to his groaning subordinates. To be honest, he was startled too. George had always been smiling and seemed quite approachable, leading him to believe that George's earlier words in the office were merely a scare tactic. It wasn't until George's swift and deadly killing that he realized George might be even more terrifying than that crazed titan. Chapter 413 Magical Spaceship. This spaceship needs some modifications. He sent Yondu to deal with his raider minions, Gamora to contact Thanos with a Tesseract to pinpoint his location, and George explored the entire base's spaceship, beginning with alchemical modifications. In space travel, a spaceship is undoubtedly the most important mode of transportation. Even though he could survive in space using only his physical body and magic, and even traverse the universe after transforming into a dragon, his speed was still far inferior to that of a spaceship. Especially for things like special jump points and cosmic maps, the spaceship's high-tech equipment was needed for location. Currently, he couldn't travel between planets, putting him at a disadvantage compared to the ancient sorcerers like the Ancient One. The Ancient One and her sorcerers used the power of dimensional lords to cast special magic, allowing them to traverse planets and even universes, while he used his own power. Therefore, to be on the safe side, it was necessary to reinforce the entire base's spaceship with magic to prevent damage in case of encounters with enemies. This also strengthened control over the spaceship. So, his first modification was the awakening charm, which mutated a will under his control onto the spaceship. This way, even when he was focused on his magical research, anyone trying to escape the base would be prevented by the spaceship's own will or would be alerted to him. Next, he added the seamless expansion charm to expand the space, and various magical barriers to strengthen the spaceship's defenses. When he was almost finished with his modifications, Gamora returned the Tesseract to him and informed him of the results of their communication. Sarnas isn't on Titan now, but at the border of the Large Magellanic Cloud and the Milky Way. The Kree Empire, under pressure from the war with the Skrull Empire, plans to negotiate peace with the Nova Empire. However, Ronan the Accuser of the Kree Empire strongly opposes this, even intending to betray the Kree Empire and become independent. Therefore, he wants to cooperate with Sarnas to destroy the Nova Empire. Sarnas ordered Ronan the Accuser to massacre half the population of a planet on the Nova Empire's border as a test of cooperation. If the test is passed, they will formally meet and reach an agreement, a three-way war. George thought for a moment and instructed, have Yondu take the ship directly to that planet on the Nova Empire's border. In the cinematic universe, the Skrull Empire was long ago defeated by the Kree Empire, and many of its people fled to Earth, leading to Project Pegasus and the birth of Captain Marvel. In this universe, so far, the Skrull Empire and the Kree Empire have been fighting back and forth, neither having been defeated, thus maintaining a state of three-way conflict. Besides these three empires, there is another powerful sheer empire in the sheer system, but they did not participate in the Three Kingdoms War and have always been at peace. In the cinematic universe, the Kree Empire was forced to sign a peace treaty with the Nova Empire because Captain Marvel constantly harassed them, and even destroyed their capital Hala and the ruling Supreme Intelligence. In this universe, however, they are simultaneously at war with the Skrull Empire and the Nova Empire, and their forces are insufficient. So they want to sign a peace treaty with the Nova Empire, first to concentrate their forces on dealing with the Skrull Empire. Good, taking down Thanos and Ronan the Accuser at the same time should make the Nova Empire very willing to help Earth enter the space age. Upon receiving the order, Yondu, along with Star-Lord and Rocket, launched a Marauder base ship and headed towards the nearest jump point to Earth. His men were still smoking on the ground and probably wouldn't recover for at least half a day. Are we really going to help him fight Thanos and Ronan like this? There's no benefit to it. Star-Lord piloted the ship, his tone clearly unwilling. In their current situation, they were being held hostage by George because of stealing the Tesseract, and they genuinely wanted to form a superpowered guard, not genuinely want to help deal with Thanos and Ronan the Accuser. Are you guys stupid? Don't you have a lot of ships here? We can sneak away in a few ships when he's not looking. The universe is so big, he won't be able to find us, Rocket Raccoon said bluntly. The base ship had hundreds of raider ships. By putting the base ship into autopilot mode, they could easily escape in smaller ships. However, before he could finish speaking, Gamora, standing nearby, coldly reminded him, I advise you not to do that. Don't forget how we were discovered in the principal's office yesterday. You think he's not here, but he might be watching us from nearby. Compared to the other four, she had actually changed her mind. If George could really help her kill Thanos, then her revenge would be complete, and compared to that, 4 billion became completely unimportant to her. And to repay her debt, she would willingly become a true member of the superpowered Guardians. Hiss, hearing Gamora's words, Star-Lord and Rocket simultaneously shuddered, instinctively glancing around. Indeed, they had spent half the day in the principal's office yesterday, not even knowing when George had arrived. Who knew if George had been lurking nearby, eavesdropping and monitoring them while they were talking? Gamora's right, we shouldn't make any moves now, Yondu replied, narrowing his eyes. As a notorious figure among the raiders, he was unwilling to obey George's orders, but disobeying now might mean death, so he had to submit first. This George usually seemed all smiles, but he was ruthless when it came to killing, and the methods he used were unbelievable. Just now, that green light had instantly vaporized people, leaving no way to defend against it. It was terrifying. However, he wasn't one to sit idly by and wait to die. Escaping now was definitely out of the question. However, they could wait until George was fighting Thanos and Ronan the Accuser before escaping. It wouldn't be easy for George to kill Thanos and Ronan the Accuser. He might even be killed instead. What are you all talking about? Having such a good time? Just as Yondu's voice faded, George's voice suddenly rang out behind them, making everyone jump. Nothing, we were thinking about how to help you defeat Thanos and Ronan the Accuser. Star-Lord reacted the fastest, immediately replying with a beaming smile, as if he hadn't been the one who said he wanted to escape. His expression was incredibly sincere. Few among the Marauders could match his skill in lying without batting an eye. PFFT, seeing Star-Lord's reaction and expression, Gamora almost burst out laughing. Chapter 414 Comprehending the Radiance of Fairies. No need for that. You just need to lead the way, I'll handle the fighting myself, George nodded with a smile. By the way, could any of you help me register a bounty hunter identity and open a personal account? His mental energy covered the entire spaceship, and he could see every move it made. Of course, he also heard their conversation. He wasn't angry, wanting to escape was only natural, and he didn't intend to keep them trapped forever. As long as they led the way and helped him complete his mission of dealing with Thanos and Ronan the Accuser, as well as establishing diplomatic relations with the Nova Empire, he would set them free. After all, to be honest, Star-Lord and the others were only of this much use to him. Did he really expect them to help him deal with the Celestials and those dimensional demons in the future? If Star-Lord could absorb all of his father ego's power, that might be of some help. It's simple, I'll help you register. Gamora took out a device from her pocket, scanned George, and then began to register a universal account and identity for him. For a top-tier cosmic spy, registering a new identity was incredibly easy. She herself possessed hundreds of different names and racial identities, all verifiable and verifiable, facilitating her espionage activities across various planets. In less than 5 minutes, George acquired a universal account as it ran, and the identity of a Nova's bounty hunter. Take the missions to kill Thanos and Ronan the Accuser. Thanos and Ronan the Accuser were at the top of the bounty hunters list, one with $1 billion bounty and the other with 800 million, both undefeated. Thanos slaughtered planets, all was leaving half alive. How could the remaining half not hate him to the core? Offering bounties for their heads was perfectly normal. Ronan the Accuser, as one of the commanders of the Kree Empire, led the Kree army to destroy and enslave countless planets. His enemies were no fewer than Thanos. He was currently penniless in space. Eliminating these two would also earn him an 1.8 billion. How could we forget? There's this option too. Star-Lord, Yondu, and Hawking Raccoon's eyes lit up when they heard George's words. They had almost forgotten that Thanos and Ronan the Accuser had top-level bounties, incredibly valuable. However, Any bounty hunter with common sense wouldn't accept those bounties, and they had completely overlooked it. Unfortunately, their eyes quickly dimmed, because it had nothing to do with them. The money would end up in George's pocket, leaving them penniless and forced to work like slaves. Perform well. Although you won't have to fight, if you perform well, you'll each get 100 million, George patted Star-Lord and Rocket on the shoulder. However, if you try to escape again, I'll follow the contract and make you disappear on the spot, body and soul. Hearing George's words, the group was initially delighted. 100 million was no small sum. Yondu's entire raiding party might not earn that much even after 20 years of hard work. That's why the billion-dollar Tesseract could attract so many bounty hunters and raiders to Earth. But now it seems that retrieving the Tesseract from Earth isn't much easier than killing Thanos. If George were truly willing to give each of them 100 million after the matter was over, they would gladly join the Guardians of the Galaxy. 100 million would be enough for them to live comfortably for the rest of their lives without doing anything. However, George's next sentence almost scared them to death, and cold sweat poured down their faces. Because it proved that George had heard their entire initial conversation. Ha ha ha, Principal, you're joking. Star-Lord quickly smoothed things over and changed the subject. Principal, this must be your first time leaving Earth. Look how beautiful the universe is. I was just joking. Everyone, please don't mind. George smiled, turned his head and looked through the spaceship's window at the dazzling starry sky outside, and couldn't help but exclaim, it really is beautiful. The best strategy for winning people over is a carrot-and-stick approach. Money meant little to him. 1.8 billion minus 500 million was still 1.3 billion, and Thanos and Ronan the Accuser's ship had been sold for at least tens of billions. Although the contract stipulated that none of them would receive a salary, to get them to work wholeheartedly, they still needed some incentive. Stop for a moment. Seeing the starry sky so closely for the first time, George's heart stirred, and he immediately ordered Yondu to stop the ship. Yondu, though unsure why the ship had to stop before reaching the jump point, dared not disobey George's order and quickly maneuvered the base ship to stop in space. Apparition. In a flash, George vanished from the ship and appeared in the starry sky outside the glass. He closed his eyes, feeling the power of the stars in the universe up close, and suddenly gained new insights into the fairy glow, a super magic he had never understood before. Fairy glow was one of fairy tale's three great super magics, and the most powerful. In terms of pure destructive power, even fairy law could not compare to fairy glow. Its main effect is to collect the energy emitted by the sun, moon, and stars, condensing it into a massive stellar halo to trap enemies, and then mercilessly punish them. Now, standing in space, experiencing the energy emanating from the sun, moon, and stars up close, his understanding of this magic instantly reached several levels. This guy is a monster. Seeing George floating alone in space without any equipment and completely unharmed, Star-Lord and the others couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. It's worth noting that even among the many civilizations and races in the universe, very few can survive in space without equipment. Even Gamora, whose body has been modified and strengthened countless times, couldn't survive more than 5 minutes alone in space. It can only be said that George's human body is excessively abnormal. Gather. River of light guided by fairies. Shine forth. To vanquish the fangs of evil. Fairy radiance. After floating in space for half a day, George suddenly opened his eyes and began to chant the magic spell of fairy radiance. As he finished chanting, a huge magic circle appeared in the sky above the universe. Chapter 415 The patrol team's SOS signal. Go. Locking his mind onto a massive meteorite in the nearby asteroid belt, the magic circle immediately unleashed a massive beam of starlight. The meteorite struck the beam, instantly turning to dust and vanishing into space. Not bad. A satisfied smile appeared on George's face as he looked at the effect of the fairy radiance. This was the effect he achieved in human form. In dragon form, with his magic power amplified, the effect would be far stronger. Meanwhile, inside the spaceship, the raiders, who had recovered somewhat, stood beside Yondu and the others, looking at the shattered meteorite outside. They stammered, "Boss, that meteorite is twice the size of our base ship." To be able to pulverize a meteorite twice the size of their spaceship in one strike meant that if the opponent wanted, they could also pulverize their base ship in a single blow. Even the Kree Sentinels' planet-destroying laser cannons, the strongest combat machines of the Kree Empire, were only about this powerful. So, you guys better watch yourselves. Don't mess with him, or I won't be able to save you. Work hard, Maybe we can actually make 200 million this time. Yondu's eyes held both shock and delight. He was shocked by George's strength, and delighted by it as well. With the strength George was showing now, he might actually be able to take down Thanos and Ronan. Then he and Peter could each get 100 million. Star-Lord, Gamora, and Rocket shared the same sentiment. Gamora didn't care about the 100 million, what she cared about was that maybe this time she could really get revenge. Let's move on. Apparating back to the spaceship, George greeted Yondu and then returned to his room to consolidate his newly comprehended fairy radiance. If he had known that the universe was conducive to comprehending fairy radiance, he should have flown out to see it sooner. Indeed, as a magician who wants to comprehend all the laws of the universe and create his own world, besides studying in seclusion, he also needs to travel more to broaden his horizons. As the spaceship continued to move forward, they soon arrived at the jump point closest to Earth. As the spaceship passed the jump point, traversing a vast distance and appearing outside the solar system, George gained another insight, this time regarding the laws of space. Space jump points in the universe are, in fact, one of the highest natural manifestations of the laws of space. Even traveling at the speed of light, it would take over a year to leave the solar system, but using a jump point, it only takes a second to escape the solar system and enter another star system. Such long-distance spatial movement is currently far beyond his capabilities. He can only rely on his own abilities to teleport from the South Pole to the North Pole at most. He cannot move between planets, let alone between star systems. A long and arduous road lies ahead. George couldn't help but sigh after passing through the space jump point. He envisions connecting all the worlds in the future, being able to freely travel to any one of them, instead of currently only being able to resonate with his soul for some auxiliary purpose. But to reach that point, his understanding of the laws of space must at least surpass the ability to teleport freely across the Marvel universes. Only those who can teleport freely across the Marvel universes can possibly break through world barriers and enter other celestial realms through a soul connection. Under George's command, the spaceship sped along without rest, constantly heading towards different jump points, finally arriving at the boundary between the Milky Way and the Large Magellanic Cloud a week later. Headmaster, we've received an urgent distress signal from the Nova Empire's patrol fleet. Their location coincides with a planet Thanos and Ronan attacked, Gamora reported, knocking on the door to George, who was inside studying magic. George temporarily stopped his research, opened the door, and led Gamora to the command room, where Star-Lord replayed the distress message. This is K-9852. We are the 8th Fleet of the Nova Empire's Border Patrol. We have detected Ronan attacking this planet, and the Mad Titan Thanos' fleet is also present. Requesting immediate support from headquarters. Immediate support. This signal was sent half an hour ago. Given the strength of Ronan and Thanos' fleet, that planet and the patrol fleet should already be destroyed. However, based on Thanos' usual practices, besides taking resources, he should be able to leave half the population alive. And judging by the speed of support from the Nova Empire here, it will take at least 2 days to gather a sufficient fleet to deal with Ronan and Thanos. By then, they will be long gone, Gamora said, her eyes somewhat dim. She had experienced this far too many times. Her planet was destroyed in the same way. All resources were plundered, half the population was wiped out, and even if the remaining half survived, they would be severely weakened, their civilization level instantly dropping several notches. If they were unlucky enough to encounter opportunistic forces, the entire planet might become a slave planet. This is something neither the Nova Empire, the Kree Empire, nor the Skrull Empire can handle. Thanos' aim isn't conquering planets, it's plundering resources and killing, then running away. A typical raider would be manageable, a patrol could easily chase them down like dogs. But with Thanos' fleet, even a third of the Empire's fleet combined wouldn't be enough to defeat him. The key is that the major empires are currently embroiled in conflict. How could they possibly spare so many troops? That's why the Mad Titan Thanos is so infamous in the universe, his power a force that even the 3 major empires dare not underestimate. Contact Thanos again. Tell him you've hijacked a raider's ship and are almost there. Tell him not to leave yet, and to wait for you on that planet. George thought for a moment, then tossed the Tesseract to Gamora again. This situation was actually the best one for him. Thanos and Ronan were both on the planet, they could be dealt with together, without worrying about escape. It's important to understand that both Thanos and Ronan's fleets could create temporary jump points to quickly evade capture. In the movie, When Ronan led his fleet to invade Earth and encountered Captain Marvel, he simply activated a jump point and left. In space, if the enemy escaped in their spaceship before the battle was over, he wouldn't be able to catch them. However, things are much easier inside a planet. No problem, with the Tesseract in hand, given Thanos' personality, he won't suspect anything. Gamora took the Tesseract and went to contact Thanos again. Chapter 416 Damn Thanos. About half an hour later, the spaceship finally arrived above planet K9852. Unlike the Blue Earth, this was a reddish planet with no oceans, but abundant land, lush with red vegetation and rich mineral resources. However, the planet had clearly suffered significant damage from the war. Everywhere were giant craters from laser cannons, vast areas of burned forest, and gray, red-striped humanoid corpses, presumably the planet's native inhabitants. Hearing that Thanos slaughtered half the planet's population each time didn't seem so bad, as it was just a number. But seeing those billions upon billions of corpses scattered across the land made it clear how cruel and horrific it was. Even during the most brutal World War II on Earth, the death toll didn't exceed 100 million, this place held billions of corpses. These guys are beasts. Star-Lord clenched his fists as he looked through the spaceship's glass at the corpses below, many of them infants, so cruelly murdered. Although they were raiders and bounty hunters, most of them were after money, especially raiders like Star-Lord who harbored heroic dreams and aspired to become renowned cosmic thieves. They rarely killed. They're just beasts. Gamora gritted her teeth, her expression no better than Star-Lord's. Although she'd seen it many times, each time it still stirred within her, reminding her of the massacre on her planet. It was like a nightmare replaying itself. Right now, I really want to blast my newly assembled quantum rocket launcher into Thanos' ass. Rocket pulled out his recently modified quantum rocket launcher from the side, his eyes filled with malice as he looked at the mountain of corpses below. If you want, we can have it later. At this moment, a faint smile appeared on George's face. However, when everyone saw his smile, they couldn't help but shudder, because that smile seemed to be filled with a chilling deathly intent and endless killing intent. George wasn't exactly a good person, but he had basic moral principles. His strong will allowed him to approach problems rationally most of the time, though he could occasionally act impulsively. To be honest, his initial attitude towards Thanos was that he only intervened because of self-interest, and he didn't think Thanos was particularly evil. After all, Thanos' initial intentions were good. He hoped to make the universe better by reducing the population. However, after seeing the billions of corpses below, he no longer thought that way. He felt that Thanos truly deserved to die, even 1,000 times over. Regardless of the reason, such a massacre was unacceptable. Headmaster, what was the foolproof battle plan you mentioned before? Isn't it a bit much for us to just go down like this? Yondu looked at the renowned sanctuary II and Ronan's dark star below, along with the countless combat ships stretching as far as the eye could see, and swallowed hard. His base ship was already quite large, containing not only living quarters but also the capacity to accommodate hundreds of raider combat ships, as well as maintenance and repairs. However, compared to Ronan's Darkstar, it was like a drop in the ocean, the difference between an ant and an elephant. The Darkstar was the Kree Empire's most powerful cosmic-class combat ship. And comparing it to Thanos' Temple II was even more incomparable. It was like an ant versus a dragon. A single donut-shaped ship launched from the Temple II could easily smash his base ship to pieces. Rumors are rumors, but seeing those top-tier warships firsthand reveals the true extent of the gap. Moreover, it wasn't just a difference in ships, the difference in numbers was even greater. Ronan's Sacker soldiers were manageable, but look at Thanos' forces, not only the Chitauri soldiers, but also Leviathan, the fearless Vanguard Legion, hover tanks, and Titan apes. Going down there would be a guaranteed suicide mission. Even if George was incredibly strong, capable of defeating Thanos and Ronan, he couldn't possibly handle so many enemies. A foolproof plan, didn't I tell you? It's just you guys watch, and I'll take care of them all. It's that simple, George replied, shrugging. What? Everyone present was stunned upon hearing George's perfect plan. This was supposed to be a foolproof plan. This was just mindless charging in. Even Star-Lord, Gamora, and Rocket, who had just been enraged, calmed down because of George's answer. They were angry, they wanted to give Thanos a good beating, but they didn't want to just throw their lives away. Headmaster, I have a plan. You see, let Gamora take the Tesseract to Thanos and Ronan, and then when Thanos and Ronan appear, We'll swarm them and kill them on the spot. After that, we'll run. Without their leader, they'll definitely panic and won't be able to watch out for us. That way, we'll get the bounty, achieve our goal, and escape unscathed, Star-Lord quickly suggested to George. He felt that if George did what he did, they would all die here today. Upon hearing this, everyone nodded in unison, agreeing that Star-Lord's plan was more reliable. At least with George's strength in shattering the meteorite, defeating Thanos and Ronan was highly probable, especially with their help. No need for all that trouble. You can just stay on the ship and watch. I've modified the ship, there won't be any danger. If you're too bored, you can stand on the ship and shit down. George looked up at the ship and said, activate the 5 elements Kabbalah defense barrier. Yes, Master. Complex magical patterns suddenly appeared around the Marauder base ship, and then 5 elemental giants, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, surrounded the ship, forming a massive magical defense barrier. This was the strongest magical defense barrier he could create. Compared to the previous 5 elements Kabbalah sealing barrier, which mainly sealed the interior, this barrier primarily defended the exterior and didn't affect attacks from the inside out. In other words, once activated, external attacks would be blocked by the barrier, while internal attacks would penetrate the barrier and reach the enemy outside. As for its defensive strength, even he himself would have to put in some effort to break through it. What's going on? When did the spaceship get an intelligent system? Hearing that the base spaceship could actually respond and was completely under George's control, Yondu and the others were stunned again. Chapter 417 The Attack of the Magical Dragon. Apparition. After activating the magical barrier on the awakened spaceship, George apparated directly to the planet's skies, then transformed into his animagus form, becoming a giant dragon. Maximum, pushing the giant magic to its limit, the 500-meter-long dragon rapidly expanded, growing to a full 7,000 meters before stopping. During this time, his giant magic hadn't stopped improving. Having researched the big card in the card captor Sakura world and incorporated new magical concepts, its effects were even better. This high-profile entrance wasn't just due to anger at the sight of corpses. As a magician, his reason always prevailed. Even though he was indeed angry, he wouldn't lose his rationality. Actually, Star-Lord's suggestion was excellent. Have Gamora use the Tesseract to lure Thanos and Ronan out first, then capture the leader. This way, the problem might be solved without much effort, and they could also take control of 2 of the universe's top-tier warships and countless other ships, maximizing their gains. However, that wasn't the effect he wanted. With a restoration charm, even if all the warships and spaceships were destroyed, he could restore them to their best condition, without worrying about any post-battle losses. As for Thanos with only the Mind Stone, he didn't really consider him a threat. Thanos with all 6 Infinity Stones was indeed strong, but Thanos with only the Mind Stone, aside from his physical strength and close combat abilities, was just a sitting duck in his eyes. Ronan was even less of a threat. Therefore, when he was confident, he would use his full power to directly crush Thanos and Ronan's fleet head-on. This was the only way to make the major empires and powers of the universe understand his strength. If he used Star-Lord's plan, even if he killed Thanos and Ronan, others would definitely think he used some trickery and would praise his strength, but only as an individual. They wouldn't really think that he alone could be worth Thanos' entire fleet. But if he decisively crushed Thanos and Ronan's fleet from beginning to end, it would mean that he alone possessed strength greater than Thanos and Ronan's fleets combined. Only then would they truly fear him. The purpose of this was, of course, to pave the way for Earth's entry into the space age by later engaging with the Nova Empire. In the movie, the Nova Empire is portrayed as a very civilized and friendly empire, but realistically, it's unrealistic to expect it to hold a place in the universe. If it doesn't demonstrate sufficient deterrence, who knows what kind of trouble might arise when Earth enters the space age. Therefore, it made such a powerful entrance from the start, choosing a head-on confrontation. What is that? A 7,000-meter-long dragon suddenly appeared in the sky, almost the size of the Dark Star, naturally attracting the attention of many below. This included Thanos and Ronan, who were meeting in the arena below. After Ronan, following Thanos' orders, destroyed all the planet's defenses and slaughtered half of its life, proving his sincerity, the two formally met to discuss cooperation. Thanos' strength and influence far surpassed Ronan's, so during the negotiations, he sat on a floating throne, appearing superior, while Ronan stood below, holding his all-powerful weapon, the Kree Warhammer. Sorceress, I've fulfilled your demands. Can we discuss more specific cooperation, Kree? Considering you have some strength, I can cooperate with you. State your demands. The king, seated on his throne, looked down at Ronan with a slightly contemptuous expression. In his eyes, Ronan was like a rebellious youth arguing with his empire, immature and naive, but undeniably possessing some strength and utility. That's why he had made this special trip. My demands are simple. We cooperate to conquer Xandar, the capital of the Nova Empire, and annihilate all the Xandar. Then I will become the new king of the Kree Empire, not the so-called Supreme Intelligence, Ronan declared excitedly, brandishing his Kree warhammer. As one of the most powerful commanders in the Kree Empire, he could no longer tolerate the Empire being controlled by the Supreme Intelligence, an intelligent system devoid of honor and shame. Especially since his entire family had perished in the war against the Nova Empire, and now the Supreme Intelligence was actually seeking peace negotiations with the Nova Empire. Once he takes over the capital of the Nova Empire, the families and commanders of the Empire will inevitably side with him. He will become the true leader of the Empire, leading it to unify the entire universe. Helping you conquer Xandar is nothing difficult for me, but what will I gain? Thanos' eyes flashed with contempt upon hearing Ronan's boastful words. Ronan immediately offered up the promise he had already made. Once I become the king of the Empire, I can give you half of the Nova Empire's planets. Then you can kill as many as you want. TCH, Thanos' face showed a disdainful expression. I'm not interested in what you're saying. You just need to help me find the orb of the universe, and I'll help you conquer Xandar. That's our agreement. Compared to his grand ideal, Ronan's ambition was utterly insignificant. Half of the Nova Empire's planets? What he wanted was to collect all 6 Infinity Stones, snap his fingers, and wipe out half of all life in the universe, restoring balance. Alright, I'll help you find the orb. Ronan was quite displeased with Thanos' attitude, but he had no choice. He needed Thanos' help, so he could only suppress his anger and agree to the other party's request. In his heart, he thought that if he unified the Empire in the future, he would immediately destroy this arrogant Thanos. Father, Gamora's ship has appeared. At this moment, Nebula, with blue skin and partially mechanized, walked over. Hearing that his adopted daughter Gamora was coming, Thanos finally showed a happy expression. He looked up at the sky and could see a base ship bearing the Marauder's insignia slowly descending. My most beloved daughter Gamora, you never disappoint me. But the next second, a huge dragon suddenly appeared in the sky, stunning him and everyone else. Gather, River of Light, guided by the fairies. Shine forth. To vanquish the fangs of evil. Fairy Radiance, after transforming into a dragon, George didn't attack Thanos and Ronan below first, but instead used his newly acquired super magic to blast towards Sanctuary II. He'd cripple the ship first to prevent their escape, then deal with them later. Chapter 418 Crushing the entire field. A massive magic circle rose above the planet. Under the immense magical power of George's dragon form, countless stellar energies from outside the planet were gathered within the circle, transforming into a terrifying circular pillar of light that slammed directly into Sanctuary II. Sensing the massive energy attack, Sanctuary II immediately concentrated its ship's energy to deploy an energy shield to protect itself. Boom! The most advanced magic clashed with the most advanced technology, and the pure stellar energy and the energy shield instantly reached a stalemate. The power of technology shouldn't be underestimated. Continuously outputting magic and constantly converting stellar energy, George watched as Sanctuary II's energy shield, though teetering on the brink of collapse, refused to shatter, and couldn't help but admire it. Thanos' Sanctuary II could definitely be considered the most powerful warship in the universe. It incorporated all of Titan's technology and all the resources Thanos had plundered over the years. Even the Nova Empire, the Kree Empire, and the Skrull Empire couldn't build such a powerful spaceship. The Empire needs to maintain the operation of all planets, and its internal harmony is not always guaranteed. It's impossible to concentrate all its technology and resources on a single warship. Just as a country can't dedicate all its money to building an aircraft carrier, the well-being of its people is also crucial. Therefore, its defensive capabilities are among the best in the universe, able to withstand his super magic for so long without being broken. However, his magic power is limitless, especially in his dragon form. It's only a matter of time before the energy shield of Sanctuary II breaks, and once the energy shield is shattered, the warship itself will absolutely not be able to withstand his magic. Thanos below also realized this, and he immediately ordered Ebony Maw beside him, have everyone attack the monster's main body. Yes, Lord Thanos. Ebony Maw quickly issued a battle order using his communication device. All his soldiers raised their laser weapons and aimed them at George in the air. The ships that were originally stationary on the ground and the Leviathan giants flying in the air also rushed towards George. At the same time, the weapons equipped on Sanctuary II were activated, resisting George's magical attacks while also targeting him. Order the Dark Ship and the Necromancer's ship to coordinate an attack. Ronan, seeing this, simultaneously ordered his pursuer, Korath. He and Thanos had already reached an agreement, so they were naturally going to fight side by side. Moreover, since the suddenly appearing monster was attacking Thanos' ship, it might also attack him. I haven't heard of any guardian deity on this planet, Ronan wondered, looking at the monster in the sky, which was comparable in size to his ship. In the vast universe, many planets have their own guardian deities. These deities vary in strength. Some can be killed with a single laser gun, while others can even withstand a space fleet. As the commander of the Kree Empire, he was very familiar with this. Generally, planets protected by powerful deities wouldn't clash unless there were special circumstances. Destroying them was certainly possible, but it would also incur significant losses. Some deities even had connections with Asgard, Mount Olympus, and other forces. Killing them would cause considerable trouble. He had investigated this planet before and found no native deities. How could one suddenly appear, and with such terrifying power, capable of going toe-to-toe with Thanos' Sanctuary II? Damn, is that guy being too overconfident? Inside the base ship, Star-Lord and the others watched as George's magic failed to break through Sanctuary II's energy shield, and all attacks were aimed at George, causing their hearts to race. I told you should listen to me, follow my plan. Too naive? Looking at the surrounding ships in Leviathan, and the countless weapons pointed at him, George remained calm. Sanctuary II's defenses were somewhat beyond his expectations, but the situation was still under his control. Although with his current dragon form, being hit by so many high-tech weapons would definitely injure him, only if they could hide him. If he wanted, he could revert to human form at any time and teleport away from all the attacks. However, he didn't need to do that now, because he had a better way. Shut it down. His superpower activated, his metal manipulation, comparable to Magneto's, directly impacted Temple II, forcibly distorting the intricate internal structures. No matter how advanced a spaceship is, it uses metal, and any use of metal will inevitably be countered by his superpower. He didn't need to twist the entire Temple II into a distorted mess. Simply destroying the delicate instruments and equipment was enough to disable most of its functions, including the energy shield. Sure enough, under the influence of his superpower, problems immediately arose within Temple II, and the energy shield malfunctioned. Without the energy shield's protection, Temple II was instantly pierced by the fairy's radiance. Ancient magic, thunderstorm descend. Having dealt with Temple II, George unleashed thunderstorm magic. Dark clouds enveloped the planet, and countless lightning bolts rained down on the soldiers carrying lasers below, electrocuting them violently. Tricolor flames. With a single opening of its maw, countless tricolor flames erupted, incinerating the approaching Leviathan giant and its combat ships. Fluttering its wings, it flew above the newly risen Dark Star, its superpowers activating to disrupt the internal defenses. Its sharp claws gripped the Dark Star tightly, and with a powerful rip, it tore it in two. I am George from planet Terran, responding to distress signal from the patrol. Sarnas and Ronan, for the peace of the universe, you will die today. Throwing the two halves of the Dark Star down, George amplified his voice across the entire planet. Rescue! Rescue! The Nova Empire patrol soldiers, half disarmed and killed, and the surviving natives of the planet, heard George's voice, and hope ignited on their faces. They hadn't expected this suddenly appearing monster to be their savior. They had just worried that the monster, so powerful, might wipe out Sarnas and Ronan's fleet and then kill them all as well. Avira, Kamaria, my wife and daughter, I will avenge you. In the distance, a man of exceptional strength but severely wounded physique struggled to his feet from the countless piles of corpses, carrying two daggers, and staggered towards the center of the battlefield. His name was Drax, the most powerful warrior on this planet. His wife and daughter had died at the hands of Ronan, and he himself had been severely wounded by Ronan. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419. Want the Rubik's Cube? Trade it for a head. Oh shit, that's brutal, Headmaster. From today onwards, you've replaced Kevin Bacon as my idol. Inside the Marauder base spaceship, Star-Lord, who had just been complaining about George's recklessness in disobeying his plans, stared wide-eyed, his jaw nearly dropping in shock, watching George tear apart the Dark Star and shout arrogantly at Thanos and Ronan below. Peter, that's not what you said just now. Rocket, equally stunned, couldn't resist teasing Star-Lord. Thanos, you're dead today. Gamora looked down at Thanos sitting on the throne, her expression complex and unpredictable. She had dreamed countless times of killing Thanos to avenge her family and people, but when she truly felt Thanos was about to die, a faint sadness welled up inside her. And Thanos below was no pushover. Seeing his painstakingly built super space battleship, Sanctuary II, destroyed and his assembled cosmic army slaughtered by George, Thanos was consumed by rage. Ebony Maw, send me up, Thanos commanded Ebony Maw, drawing his tyrant blades. He wasn't blinded by anger. In this situation, if he didn't lead the fight, defeat was inevitable. He wasn't entirely unsure whether he could handle the monster calling itself George. George's destructive power was indeed astonishing, but his sheer size made him difficult to target. If Ebony Maw could send him to his doom, Thanos could use his sharp tyrant blades to strike George's vitals and eliminate him. Ebony Maw clearly had great confidence in Thanos' strength, a confidence built from years of undefeated cosmic warfare. Upon hearing Thanos' command, George immediately activated his abilities, manipulating several metal plates to send not only Thanos but also Black Dwarf, Corvus Glaive, and Proxima Midnight, all powerful allies, up to the top. That's about enough. After wreaking havoc in the air, shooting down most of the Leviathan giants and the attacking ships, George sensed the arrival of Thanos and his companions and reverted from his dragon form back to human form. Thanos' physical strength was still formidable, and coupled with the sharp tyrant's blades, one could easily be injured if careless. It's like how a person can swat a wasp, but if stung, it will still cause a large swelling. If a vital spot is stung, it could be fatal. Therefore, reverting to human form was more suitable for dealing with Thanos and his companions who were preparing to ambush them. Human form lacked the magic and physical strength of dragon form, and its overall destructive power was far less, but it was more agile and easier to use various magic and superpowers in combination during combat. Moreover, since most of the spaceships have been destroyed, there's no need to worry about Thanos escaping. This is a perfect opportunity to experiment with the various spells he's recently learned. Normally, there wouldn't be enough people for him to experiment with magic, and crucially, there's no need to worry about accidentally killing people due to poor control of the power. Want to come up? Get down. Seeing George suddenly transform from dragon form into human form, Thanos and his companions were startled, but reacted quickly, swiftly using the metal plates to attack George. George, however, used his superpowers to pull the metal plates carrying the four of them away. Ebony Maw's telekinetic control is extensive, encompassing metal, trees, and rocks, but his control over metal is far inferior. Therefore, he easily won the battle for control of the metal plates. Without the metal plates, Thanos and the other three, who couldn't fly, fell directly from the sky. However, given their physical bodies, they certainly wouldn't die from the fall. After adjusting their landing angle, they all landed safely, standing in a row. George landed at that moment, standing opposite them. You didn't come because of a distress call, did you? Thanos looked up at the Marauder ship that had landed slowly alongside George, squinting as he asked. Gamora said she had obtained the Tesseract and hijacked the Marauder base ship, and yet George appeared right after they arrived. Crucially, George even claimed to be from planet Terran. Even if Thanos was stupid, he understood that George's arrival wasn't because of a distress signal, but related to Gamora. Of course not, I came here for this. George flipped his hand, smiling as he took the Tesseract from his transmutation space. I heard you have $1 billion bounty for this, so I personally delivered it to you. A space stone, very good, then I must thank you. Thanos' eyes narrowed when he saw the Tesseract in George's hand, and he gestured to Ebony Maw beside him. Ebony Maw immediately activated his power, attempting to control the Tesseract to fly over. Sizzle, the Tesseract, barely lifted from George's hand, immediately fell back down. A sharp spike, entirely made of metal, suddenly shot out from the ground behind Ebony Maw, piercing the back of his head. Ebony Maw was powerful enough to suppress an unprepared Doctor Strange, but his physical body was too weak. He lacked even the ability to survive in space, making him the most vulnerable of the group. If his attack had been aimed at the other four, Thanos, Proxima Midnight, and Corvus Glaive would likely have reacted and dodged it, and Black Dwarf would have only been injured at most. In fact, even Thanos, with his physique, probably wouldn't have been able to break through his defenses by taking the hit head-on. I haven't even spoken yet. Who gave me permission to move? George put away the Tesseract, sneered at the dead Ebony Maw, and said to Thanos, I can give you the Tesseract, but on one condition, your head in exchange. I think you're courting death. Before Thanos could reply, Black Dwarf, seeing Ebony Maw killed and George's arrogant words, couldn't contain himself and grabbed his giant axe, leaping down. Get down, however, facing Black Dwarf's axe swing, George simply swung his hand down, and Black Dwarf was immediately slammed to the ground. Black Dwarf's giant axe was made of metal, and his armor was also metal, so it was naturally under George's superpower control. If he wanted, he could even make Black Dwarf fly a kite in the sky. Now, his control over metal had developed to the point that it was comparable to Magneto in the movies, with a maximum force of hundreds of thousands of tons, which was no joke. To be honest, just relying on superpowers, without magic, he could easily deal with enemies of the Black Order's caliber. However, relying solely on superpowers would be insufficient to defeat Thanos. Thanos's physical body is too strong, and it would be difficult to break through his defenses with superpowers alone, making him not so easy to kill. Chapter 420 The Remote Mage teaches you a lesson. Kill. Seeing Black Dwarf suppressed and his trusted Lieutenant Ebony Maw instantly killed in a sneak attack, Thanos knew there was nothing left to negotiate. With a roar, he brandished the Tyrant's blades and led the charge. Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive followed closely behind, and the surviving Vanguard Legion and Titan Apes, hearing Thanos's roar, also surrounded them. The ancient magic thunderstorm had a huge attack range, but its individual power was average. It was fine for dealing with the Sacker soldiers, but it couldn't harm the Vanguard and Titan Apes. So, a large number of Vanguard and Titan Apes were still alive on the ground. Let the wizard teach you a lesson. George spread his wings and flew directly into the sky, leaving Thanos and the others dumbfounded. Without Ebony Maw and the spaceship, they couldn't fly. Were they supposed to pick up the laser guns of the Sacker soldiers to shoot? The key was that the Vanguard and Titan Apes weren't smart enough to use high-tech laser weapons, they only knew how to fight in close combat. Actually, it's not entirely Thanos' fault for not considering things thoroughly. According to the original plan, Thanos' army had the universe's most powerful anti-aircraft warships and countless combat ships, the Leviathan Giant, as well as the Vanguard Legion, Titans, and countless Sacker and Chitauri minions for ground combat. It was incredibly comprehensive. However, George had now eliminated all the anti-air units, so they could only watch helplessly as George could fly. Even with their incredible jumping abilities, they couldn't possibly hit George who could fly. A whole bunch of tough, fleshy targets, perfect material for experimenting with new magic. George smiled slightly, pointing downwards to begin experimenting with his recently completed improved magic. Avada Kedavra, a beam of green light instantly struck Black Dwarf, whom he had been suppressing to the ground with his superpowers, unable to get up no matter how hard he struggled. The green light didn't disappear immediately after hitting Black Dwarf. Instead, it used Black Dwarf as a medium to begin connecting to other targets in the surrounding area. In the blink of an eye, dozens of Vanguard guards and Titan Apes fell to the ground, just like Black Dwarf. Black Dwarf, perhaps due to his exceptionally strong physique and powerful soul, didn't die immediately, but he appeared to be barely clinging to life. Those Vanguard guards and Titan Apes, whose physical bodies were formidable but whose souls were clearly inferior to ordinary humans, biochemically modified, were all completely lifeless, half their bodies corroded and vanished. The Killing Curse, one of the 3 unforgivable curses in the Harry Potter world, while not particularly destructive, even a statue could easily block it, and it's easily dodged, and can only attack a single target, possesses immense destructive power against the soul. Therefore, he never abandoned this spell, constantly integrating magical concepts from various worlds, striving to further develop and enhance its power. The Chain Lightning version of the Killing Curse is an upgraded version he developed based on the Killing Curse, evolving from a single target spell into a multi-target spell capable of attacking multiple targets simultaneously. Furthermore, in addition to soul attacks, he also enhanced its energy-based attacks. In fact, the normal killing curse also has additional energy attacks. For example, if an adult wizard throws a killing curse, a statue can block it, but the statue itself will also be blown up. This shows that the killing curse can damage the body in addition to the soul, but the effect is not obvious. Now, the enhanced killing curse, if it hits an enemy, not only annihilates the soul to a large extent, but also corrodes the body. The raider with the electric face was hit by his killing curse before, and his soul and body were destroyed at the same time, leaving not even a trace. These vanguards and titan apes have strong bodies, so they were only corroded by half. In addition to the chain lightning killing curse, he is currently researching a tracking killing curse. Once the research is completed, he can mark the enemy first, and then let the killing curse chase and attack the enemy, greatly improving the weakness of the killing curse's low hit rate. You flash pretty fast. A dozen or so chain lightning killing curses wiped out hundreds of vanguards and titan apes, but still did not hit Thanos, Proxima Midnight, or Corvus Glaive. The three were too fast and had too much combat experience. After witnessing the power of the chain lightning killing curse, they didn't try to take it head-on, but instead used various methods to probe and dodge. Let's try this one. After gaining a direct understanding and summary of the chain lightning killing curse's effects, George stopped casting this spell and began experimenting with other spells. He folded his wings and landed directly, pressing his hands to the ground, instantly creating a huge magic circle. Terrain effect, swamp. Under the effect of the magic circle, the hard ground softened, turning into a large swamp. The remaining vanguard and titan ape were immediately trapped in the swamp, and Thanos and his companions' movement speed was greatly reduced. This was the spell he had searched for from Yuzuru of the Hungry Wolf Knights, terrain effect, which could arbitrarily change the surrounding terrain. Plants, binding. A second magic circle appeared, and countless arm-thick vines stretched out from the swamp, grabbing the vanguard and titan ape-like tentacle monsters and dragging them into the depths of the swamp. This was a large-scale binding spell he created by combining the plant magic of the Wolf Knights Cosmos with the elven magic of Middle-earth, perfectly suited for use with the terrain. Just as George used the two newly experimented spells in combination to eliminate all the vanguard guards and titan apes in one fell swoop, Thanos and his two companions had already taken advantage of his landing to circle behind him. If George had remained in the air, they would have been helpless, but now that he was on the ground, Thanos' tyrant blades could shatter Captain America's shield, and Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight's weapons were no ordinary weapons. Therefore, while the magically enhanced vines could bind the vanguard guards and titan apes, they were ineffective against them, being directly cut down. However, this was within George's expectations. The new spells are quite effective. Alright, it's about time to get down to business. Facing the three weapons so close at hand, he moved his mind, and the three were instantly pulled away by a powerful force, each flying off. Black Dwarf wore metal armor, as did Thanos, Proxima Centauri, and Corvus Glaive. As long as they wore metal armor, they would inevitably be subject to his abilities. Unless they removed all their armor. The reason Thanos and his companions were able to evade the magical attacks was not only because of their immense power, but also because his mind had been focused on testing the effects of his new magic. Otherwise, he could have easily taught them a lesson. Chapter 421 As long as I'm stronger than you. My lord, the restraining force comes from the armor. He should have the ability to control a metal. Proxima Midnight forcibly planted her weapon on a spaceship to stabilize herself, shouting towards Thanos. Thanos reached out and tore his own armor apart, throwing it away. Then take off your armor and fight him, without the armor restraining him. Thanos, wielding the tyrant blades, charged at George again. Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive, the husband and wife duo, followed suit, also removing their armor and following closely. The armor's off, but what about the weapons? George smirked, concentrating his power on the three's weapons. Instantly, their weapons began to forcibly break free from their control, forcing them to stop again. Thanos' physical body was too strong. He managed to suppress the tyrant blades from leaving his hands with his own strength, but Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive were far less capable. Even with all their might, they couldn't stop the weapons from slipping from their hands. They could only watch helplessly as the weapons broke free and turned to attack them. Sleep well, "Little one, the blue night sky's so beautiful." George suddenly hummed a lullaby as Thanos continued his charge, still gripping his weapon. As Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive struggled to dodge their attacks, the gentle voice reached the ears of the three, causing their eyelids to flutter. This was a spell he had learned from the elf Lothine, a spell capable of hypnotizing even Morgoth. He hadn't yet reached Lothine's level, but it was clearly already very effective. Sizzle. Sizzle, two sharp sounds of blades piercing flesh rang out. Under the influence of the hypnotic spell, Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive only paused for a moment before their respective weapons pierced their bodies instantly. Thanos, too, momentarily lost his focus, nearly dropping the tyrant blades from his grasp. However, at that moment, Thanos suddenly produced a small yellow stone. The stone emitted a special energy fluctuation, instantly dispelling George's hypnotic magic. It was the embodiment of cosmic consciousness, the Mind Stone. "Ah!" Thanos roared, pressing the Mind Stone between the tyrant blades. Relying on the power unleashed by the Mind Stone, he forcibly dispelled George's control over the tyrant blades and charged at George again. "The Mind Stone can be used like this." George's face showed a hint of surprise upon seeing this. It was understandable that the Mind Stone could dispel his hypnotic magic, but it still surprised him that it could prevent him from controlling the metal. Perhaps the Mind Stone's power level was higher, or perhaps he needed to attach some spiritual power to the metal to control it. Dispelling that spiritual power from the metal naturally made it impossible to control. But it didn't matter. Expelliarmus, with a wave of his hand, George cast a spell on the charging Thanos. The tyrant blades in Thanos' hand, inlaid with a Mind Stone, flew out, leaving him stunned on the spot. The disarming charm, a rule-based spell, will inevitably disarm anyone who is hit. As a sorcerer, one has many methods to handle any situation. Plasma cannon. With a clasp of his hands, a terrifying plasma cannon shot out, sending the stunned Thanos flying. Picking up the tyrant's twin blades, removing the Mind Stone and placing it in his storage space, George flew to Thanos, who had landed and stood up again. "He's really tough." Looking at Thanos, who had only suffered a slight blackening on his chest after being hit by the plasma cannon capable of seeing mountains, George couldn't help but marvel at Thanos' physical strength. His own body was already quite strong, but compared to Thanos', it was far inferior. Frankly, he felt Thanos' physical defense might not be worse than his dragon form. The main problem was that his abilities were too limited and easily countered. But Thanos was a scientist, so he could understand. "You bastard, you have no idea how great I am." Even without the tyrant's blades, Thanos showed no sign of surrender. He stood up, dusted himself off, and his eyes shone with unwavering determination. His belief had never wavered, for he always believed he was on the side of justice. For the justice he held dear, even dying here today would be a sacrifice for his ideals. "I don't need to understand your greatness, just be stronger than you." George shook his head as he watched Thanos rise again. What kind of person is the most terrifying? Someone like Thanos, because they're like fanatical followers of a cult. You can't communicate with them using normal human logic. Against such enemies, you can only be stronger, using pure power to punish them. This was also the philosophy George always believed in. The strong prey on the weak, survival of the fittest. Only when your power is sufficient will the truth you seek exist. As the saying goes, dignity resides only on the edge of a sword, truth only within the range of a cannon, and another saying goes, "I practice martial arts so that even a fool can speak to me calmly." He studied magic, pursued power, so that in the myriad worlds, if he encountered an unreasonable being like Thanos, he could calmly smash his dog's head. Of course, he must admit, he also enjoyed the process of learning magic and the thrill of increasing power. Die, but just then, a blue figure suddenly burst from the mud, transforming her left hand into a spike, aiming directly at Thanos' heart in the back. This person was none other than Nebula, Thanos' other adopted daughter. The spike accurately pierced Thanos, but unfortunately, it didn't even penetrate his defenses, not even piercing his skin. Why did even you betray me?" Thanos grabbed Nebula by the neck, holding her up in front of him, his face filled with rage. Gamora's betrayal saddened him, but Nebula's betrayal enraged him. How dare a little thing who is usually most afraid of him betray him? "Why? You destroyed my planet, killed my people, and constantly punished me, modifying my body, turning me into a cyborg monster. Do you expect me to be grateful?" Nebula glared at Thanos with hatred. "I wish I could cut every piece of your flesh off." Thanos' cruelty, His power, his terror were deeply etched in her heart. From childhood, even though she hated Thanos, she dared not show it. She could only try to please him, hoping to gain his attention and survive. But when she saw Thanos running around like a dog under George's attacks, being beaten helplessly, even having his weapons and the Mind Stone taken away, she realized that Thanos was not as powerful as she had imagined, nor was he invincible. So, years of anger and hatred surged up instantly, causing her to launch a sneak attack. Chapter 422 My Master is a Hexagonal Mage. Then Thanos ripped off Nebula's mechanical left arm and half her body, tossing them to the ground like trash. Half of Nebula's body was modified mechanical. With these parts torn off, she wouldn't survive more than 10 minutes. Before I die, I'll watch you die first. Nebula, lying on the ground with half her body on the ground, looked at Thanos standing there, a relieved smile on her face. When she realized Thanos wasn't as powerful as he had imagined, her fear suddenly vanished, and she could even face her impending death with equanimity. It turned out that her fear of Thanos all these years wasn't because she was afraid of death. After undergoing so many agonizing modifications, how could she be afraid of death? She's right, you'll definitely die before her. At this moment, George also walked over. Thanos turned to look at George. Then let's see who dies first. With a roar, Thanos' muscles bulged, and he charged towards George like a cannonball. Even without weapons, barehanded, he could defeat any enemy. The law of the fairies. George raised his hand, and a dazzling white light descended from the sky, enveloping Thanos' body. The tyrant's blades, under George's mental control, shot forth, carrying the force of hundreds of thousands of tons in a flash. The white light dissipated, and the head of the cosmic overlord Thanos slowly fell from his neck. George caught the tyrant's blades. Done, job done. Seeing Thanos dead at George's hands, Star-Lord and the others from the Marauder base ship disembarked and came over. Nebula. Gamora held the barely alive Nebula in her arms, her voice softening. She wasn't without feelings for her sister, who had always been her rival and never uttered a kind word. Although they weren't related by blood, they had grown up together, lived together, fought together, and shared a deep sympathy. Actually, I didn't really want to beat you. I know I'm not as good as you. I just wanted a sister. Thanos is dead. I hope you can be happy in the future. Nebula smiled when she saw Gamora appear. You'll be alright. Gamora turned to Rocket and the others who had followed. Think of something, Rocket. Aren't you best at repairing machines? Can you help repair her body? It's troublesome. We lack materials and tools, and there's no time. Rocket stepped forward to check and shook his head. If he had all the tools and materials, with his top-tier technology in the universe, he could have easily fixed it when she was first injured. But where would he find suitable tools and materials on this shattered battlefield? And Nebula looked like she wouldn't last another minute. I'll do it. George walked over carrying the tired twin blades. Restored to original state, with a healing spell, Nebula's damaged half of her body immediately returned to its original state. Healing spells aren't effective against injuries to living beings, but they are a godsend for mechanical beings. The universe is vast and full of wonders. Seeing Nebula come alive with a casual wave of George's hand, everyone couldn't help but marvel. Just as everyone was at their most relaxed moment after victory, a blue figure suddenly descended from the sky, wielding a warhammer and smashing it straight at the back of George's head. The blow was swift, accurate, and incredibly vicious, clearly intended to kill instantly. The one who wielded this hammer was none other than Ronan the Accuser, who had been hiding all along. Using his versatile weapon, the Kree hammer, he had concealed himself from all attacks, hiding high in the sky, witnessing the entire battle, and carefully analyzing George's weaknesses. He noticed that George, in his human form, had never directly fought Thanos and the others, instead using various abilities. This indicated that his physical body was inevitably fragile, like ebony maw. Therefore, by taking advantage of a moment of surprise and launching a close-range sneak attack, there was a high chance of killing him in one blow, thus reaping the benefits and obtaining the 2 Infinity Stones. As the commander of the Kree Empire, he naturally had some understanding of the Infinity Stones, knowing that each stone contained immense power. If he could acquire 2 Infinity Stones, the loss of the Darkstar could be made up for. Unfortunately, was reality really as simple as he thought? Ronan, did you really think I didn't know you were hiding in the sky? Just as Ronan's hammer was about to strike George's head, George smirked, suddenly turned, and raised the tyrant's twin blades, precisely blocking Ronan's attack. He wouldn't ignore someone as important as Ronan. Throughout the battle with Thanos and the others, his mental abilities had been locked onto Ronan, preventing him from escaping in a small spaceship. Therefore, Ronan's supposedly stealthy attack was entirely under his telepathic surveillance. What? He actually blocked it with his bare hands. Ronan's expression changed drastically when he realized his full-force hammer blow had been blocked. He hadn't expected George to not only react in such a relaxed moment, but also block his fatal attack with his bare body. This shows that George's physical abilities aren't much worse than his, and his analysis was completely wrong. Get lost. George's right hand, wielding the tyrant's twin blades, suddenly grew larger, its strength increasing dramatically. George slashed at Ronan, who quickly raised his Kree hammer to block. The tyrant's twin blades, capable of shattering Captain America's shield, combined with George's gigantic power, cleaved the Kree hammer in two with a single strike, and simultaneously severed its arms. I'm a hexagonal mage, I can play close combat with you too. While his physical body in his other form couldn't compare to Thanos, he was still a Dragon Slayer mage. With so many clones to enhance him, he wouldn't be inferior to Ronan. Furthermore, the geometric increase in physical strength after gigantification meant that with a little practice in combat techniques, he could easily beat Ronan to pulp with his bare hands. Actually, combat techniques weren't a problem. His clone in the card-captor Sakura world was currently researching the fight card. Once he understood it, he could directly imbue Ronan with maxed-out combat abilities through magic. Ah, my arm! Ronan screamed in agony as his arm was severed. Knowing he was no match for the enemy, he turned and ran, trying to find a spaceship to escape the planet. Ronan, you killed my wife and my daughter. I'll cut off your head. However, he hadn't gone far when a burly man wielding daggers pounced on him, plunging two daggers into his eyes. Ah! Ronan screamed again, trying to fight back, but with both arms gone and blood gushing out, he was powerless. He was pinned down and stabbed to death. Chapter 423 The Supreme's Invitation. It really is the planet where Drax the Destroyer is. While healing the burly man who finished off Ronan with healing magic, George casually read the man's memories and realized that the man was none other than Drax the Destroyer. No wonder the native inhabitants of this planet looked so familiar. Headmaster, the captain of the Nova Empire Patrol wants to see you. Just as George was using a repair spell to extensively repair the Sanctuary II, the Dark Star, and various combat ships, Gamora approached with a middle-aged man in Nova Empire uniform. Having dealt with Thanos and Ronan, George had Gamora and Yondu free the imprisoned patrol members and half of the native inhabitants, while he began repairing the spaceships and ships. Thanos and Ronan's spaceships and ships were among the best in the entire universe. Whether sold for money or brought back to bolster the school's strength, they would be excellent. Collect. George pulled out a box with the largest possible space, crafted using the seamless stretch charm. He placed the repaired warships and spaceships inside, then turned to the patrol captain with a smile. Hello, I'm George from planet Terran. I apologize for being late. No. If it weren't for your arrival, we wouldn't have been saved. I'm Farron, captain of the 8th Fleet of the patrol team, representing the Nova Empire to express my gratitude. The captain, recovering from the miraculous scene of George repairing and recovering the spaceships, hurriedly waved his hands nervously in thanks. This George from planet Terran had single-handedly wiped out Thanos and Ronan's entire fleet, even severing their heads. He was practically as powerful as a legendary ancient god. Even their empire's supreme ruler would be extremely cautious in the face of such a powerful being. Just a quick favor. Who told him to put up a bounty and cause such unrest on our planet? George handed the box containing Thanos and Ronan's heads to Farron. I rarely leave my planet. This is my first time here. Gamora told me your Nova Empire is the largest empire in the galaxy, so consider this my welcoming gift to your empire. A welcoming gift. Farron looked at the heads of Thanos and Ronan in the box, swallowed hard, and tremblingly accepted the box. Wasn't this a bit too terrifying? Mr. George, I've reported the situation to the Empire. Our Supreme Being wishes to invite you to the capital, Xander. Do you have time? The killing of Thanos and Ronan, and the annihilation of their entire fleet, was a major event that would shake the entire universe. Even the Nova Supreme Being was shocked upon hearing his report. However, for the entire Nova Empire, this was naturally a very good thing. Thanos was a scourge to the universe. His death would be met with applause from all other powers. Ronan, on the other hand, was the Kree's most steadfast hawk, extremely hostile to the Nova Empire. Ronan's death would only hasten the signing of a peace treaty between the Kree and the Nova Empire. Therefore, the Nova Empire was deeply grateful to George and genuinely wanted to express his thanks in person. At the same time, for the sake of the Empire, it was crucial to cultivate a good relationship with someone as powerful as George. Otherwise, if they became enemies, it would be a major problem. Of course I have time. I also happen to have something I'd like to discuss with the Supreme. George accepted the invitation without hesitation. His purpose in leaving Earth was twofold. Eliminating the Thanos threat was already complete, and the next step was to discuss cooperation with the Nova Empire to help Earth enter the space age as quickly as possible and complete interstellar migration. Hearing George's agreement, Farhan breathed a sigh of relief. The Supreme's mission for him was to bring George to the capital, but someone of George's caliber couldn't be easily persuaded to come if he didn't want to. Then, Mr. George, please wait a day. We will depart for the capital immediately after that. Farhan and George agreed on a departure time, and then Farhan returned to find the surviving high-ranking officials on this planet to borrow their equipment to report the situation and handle subsequent matters. Facing a planet attacked by Thanos, the Nova Empire was quite experienced. A day was enough to handle most of the situation, and they only needed to wait for the support logistics forces to arrive and clean up the mess. After all, this planet still had half of its population, and Thanos hadn't taken away the looted resources, making it much better off than other planets. To put it bluntly, because of the reduced population, the quality of life for the planet's inhabitants might even improve in the short term. However, it's estimated that not many people would be willing to enjoy such a benefit. Half an hour earlier, in the capital of Xander, the Nova Supreme, after receiving a report from Farron, urgently summoned all the Empire's higher-ranking officials. That's the situation. What are your thoughts on that god from Tehran, a being capable of single-handedly destroying Thanos and Ronin's fleet, possessing various magical powers, must be an ancient god from Tehran in her eyes. Only an ancient god could possess such power. Tehran was a technologically backward planet, not even having ventured beyond interstellar space, yet the Empire had never sent anyone to actively contact it. Normally, when an empire discovers a planet with such a backward civilization, its policy is to make contact, spread technology, and then integrate it into the Empire's system, making it part of the Empire's planet. Because in the Empire's historical records, Tehran was within the sphere of influence of the divine realm and was home to many powerful ancient gods. Therefore, upon learning the news, she naturally assumed that George was also a powerful ancient god. I think this is a good thing. Our peace agreement with the Kree Empire has been difficult to advance because of the obstruction of Ronan's faction. Now that Ronan is dead, the peace agreement will surely proceed much more smoothly, said one of the Empire's higher-ranking officials. Another high-ranking official nodded, Your Majesty, I think we can try inviting this ancient god to our Xander as a guest, partly to express our gratitude, and partly to gain another ally. I have the same consideration. Nova Venerable agreed with the suggestion. The Kree Empire wanted to reach a peace agreement because simultaneously fighting the wars of the Nova Empire and the Skrull Empire was too exhausting. While the Nova Empire was only facing the Kree Empire, due to the difference in strength, years of war had reached their limit, and they actually wanted to end the war and recuperate even more than the Kree Empire. Therefore, if we can win over George, this ancient god, to become an ally of the Empire, it will not only speed up the end of the war, but also greatly enhance the Empire's security in the later stages. Chapter 424 Major News from the Universe. Your Majesty, the first high-ranking Empire official stood up. I believe that if this ancient god is interested in cooperating with us and willing to visit the capital, then we should publicize this widely and let all the major empires know about it as quickly as possible. He continued, the peace agreement has been delayed for so long not only because of the obstruction from hawks like Ronan within the Kree Empire, but also because the Skrull and Shia empires have been making numerous underhanded moves. Releasing this news will greatly deter them. Even if the ancient god doesn't ultimately cooperate with us, the deterrent effect will be enough to expedite our peace agreement. The Skrull Empire didn't want the Nova Empire and the Kree Empire to reach a peace agreement, as that would mean they would face a Kree attack alone. As for the Shia Empire, while seemingly involved in a three-way war, they actually hoped the three empires would fight tooth and nail so they could reap the benefits later. Alright, since everyone agrees, let Fran try to extend the invitation. Once Fran succeeds, the intelligence department will immediately relay the news throughout the universe, and the reception department will prepare for the reception to the highest standards. making sure he feels our sincerity as much as possible. After some discussion, the Nova Supreme finalized all the arrangements. Half an hour later, Fran received George's reply, and the entire Empire immediately sprang into action. In less than half a day, major star systems, media outlets, and powers throughout the universe, even many remote planets, knew about a major news story. The infamous Mad Titan, who had slaughtered countless lives in the universe, possessed the most terrifying fleet in the universe, and was someone even several major empires couldn't handle. Sorceress was dead. And it wasn't by any empire sending a fleet to annihilate him, but by a powerful ancient god from the planet Terran, who single-handedly destroyed Sorceress and his entire fleet. The incident began when Thanos offered a $1 billion bounty for raiders and bounty hunters to find the Tesseract on planet Terran, angering the ancient god of Terran. In a fit of rage, the ancient god left Terran and annihilated Thanos and his fleet. It is said that in the process, the ancient god also saved a planet on the border of the Nova Empire. Therefore, the Nova Empire's supreme ruler invited the ancient god to the capital, seemingly indicating an alliance. This major cosmic news caused a huge uproar. The inhabitants of planets slaughtered by Thanos celebrated his death and were filled with gratitude towards the ancient god, declaring a warm welcome for him to visit their planets. Furthermore, because the ancient god originated from Terran, these planetary inhabitants naturally felt a sense of goodwill towards everything related to Terran. Upon hearing this news, various empires and powers mobilized all their intelligence personnel to verify the information and convened meetings to formulate various countermeasures. This is equivalent to 3 countries each having a combat force of 10,000 men, while George alone is equivalent to a combat force of 5,000. Whichever country he allies with, the other 2 will have to take it very seriously. One day later, on planet K9852, George looked at Yondu, Star-Lord, Gamora, and the others before him. 100 million each, I've already given you. Now I'll give you 2 choices. First, you can take the money I gave you and leave to go back to your original lives. I won't pursue the matter of stealing the Tesseract. Second, you can officially join the school, become members of the school's super-powered guard team focused on the universe, come with me to Xander, and help Earth enter the space age. Don't worry, we'll all be friends during this time, so it doesn't matter which you choose. He uploaded the video and pictures of killing Thanos, along with relevant evidence, and the $1.8 billion bounty quickly entered George's newly opened account. He also generously gave $500 million to Yondu, Star-Lord, and the other 4. Leaving Earth was basically settled, with Farron leading the way to Xander. There shouldn't be any major problems. So if Star-Lord and the others didn't want to continue following him, it wouldn't affect him much. They could all part ways amicably. You help me kill Thanos and avenge him, that's the best reward. I don't want the 100 million, I choose the second option. Gamora had already made her choice, so she was the first to answer when George brought it up. Seeing Gamora make her choice so quickly, Star-Lord, who had been hesitating, immediately said, I also choose the second option. His reasons for this choice were simple. First, he had long wanted to leave Yondu's Raiders crew. His dream was to be a chivalrous thief, not a bandit. Second, his return to Earth and seeing his aged uncle, his only remaining family member, made him realize some things. He wanted to spend more time with his uncle while he was still alive. Finally, and most importantly, he realized he seemed to have fallen in love with Gamora, not the kind of love where you just have casual sex, but the kind where you truly want to spend your life with her. I choose the second option. Rocket Raccoon, seeing Gamora and Star-Lord make their choices, also made his. I've seen animals like myself on Earth, things I've never seen in the universe. Maybe Earth is my true home. This was just the external reason he used to convince himself. The real reason was that his time with Star-Lord and the others had brought back the feeling he had when he first met Lyra and his friends, the feeling of friendship. He couldn't bear to lose that feeling, which was why he chose to stay. I am Groot. Groot was simple-minded. Whatever Rocket chose, he chose too. Then I'll choose the first option. Free Ravagers prefer a free life, and besides, I have a whole bunch of subordinates to support. Yondu shrugged and chose the first option. But if you need any Ravager services, we're always here. His life experiences made it impossible for him to work for any one faction. Even for $1 billion or $2 billion, he would still choose to return to the free life of the Ravagers. That was his home. Those Ravagers who had freed him from slavery in the Kree Empire were his friends and family. Okay, that's settled then. Let's get ready and head out with Farron. George smiled, not minding at all. However, looking at Nebula standing next to Gamora and Drax the Destroyer sitting there, he sighed to himself, if only Mantis were missing, we'd have the Guardians of the Galaxy. Nebula and Drax, having been saved by him and avenged by him, volunteered to join his team to repay him. Chapter 425 Highest Hospitality Standards. The Nova battleship took off from planet K9852, heading towards the nearest space jump point. Inside the battleship, George admired the beautiful starry sky outside. According to Farron's calculations, even taking the shortest route would take 3 days to reach the capital, Xander. Principal, look at these. Gamora held up an instrument in front of George, displaying news about the ancient god George of Transylvania defeating Thanos and planning to cooperate with the Nova Empire. It seems this journey should go smoothly. George smiled after reading the news. Gamora, as one of the universe's top spies, was well versed in the current cosmic situation and had told him about the Nova Empire's predicament. Since the Nova Empire had released this information, it meant they wanted to cooperate with him. His purpose in going to the Nova Empire's capital was also to seek cooperation, making it a perfect match. The Nova Empire wanted to use his reputation to intimidate other empires and reach a peace agreement. He needed the Nova Empire's help to enter the space age and complete the population migration. It was a win-win situation, nothing wrong with it. He wasn't going to be so dramatic as to feel annoyed that the Nova Empire had released such ambiguous information without his consent, and then deliberately caused trouble in the capital. He wasn't a child. He needed to resolve these matters quickly so he could return to Earth and continue focusing on his magical research to improve himself. Despite his current success, in the entire Marvel Universe, he wasn't particularly powerful. There were countless beings at the single universe level, many at the multiverse level, not to mention those at the super-universe and omni-universe levels. If he didn't improve his strength, any Galactus passing by could devour him and Earth. As for being considered an ancient god, so be it. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain how a human could possess such power and abilities. Besides, the identity of an ancient god was more intimidating, so there was nothing wrong with it. 3 days later, a silver planet appeared before him. Unlike the naked star that flashed by in the movies, the silver planet he saw now was surrounded by various powerful spaceships and high-tech defense systems that he couldn't understand. This isn't the peaceful era depicted in the movies. The war between the Nova Empire and the Kree Empire is far from over, and the capital's defenses are extremely tight. If Ronan dared to sail the Darkstar to Xander during this time, like in the movies, he'd probably be pulverized before even entering the atmosphere. Don't underestimate the strength of one of the 4 great empires of the universe. The gap is huge. George looked at the rows of spaceships, thinking of Earth's tanks and cannons, and shook his head inwardly. They weren't even in the same league. However, in terms of danger, Earth is actually more dangerous than any other planet in the universe. The dangers in the universe are at most the destruction of a planet due to interstellar wars, or the destruction of a certain number of planets. But major events on Earth could wipe out the entire universe. If that weren't the case, he would have already found a way to leave Earth with his friends and find a safe, peaceful planet to study magic. Because they had already received communication from Farron, when the patrol ships approached Xander. The guard fleet immediately split into 2 lines, solemnly opening a passage into the planet. Thanks to Mr. George, this is the first time I've ever received such treatment. Fran looked at the special lane opened up by the guard fleet, his face beaming with excitement. Patrols were at the bottom of the Imperial military system, like constables patrolling the streets in ancient times, and Fran was the head constable. Now, this lowly constable from a border town was entering the capital, where the Imperial Guard was lining up to welcome him, and soon the Emperor would personally receive him. How could he not be excited? Haha, I never thought we'd have this day. Star-Lord and Rocket beside him laughed heartily. One was a petty thief frequently caught stealing chickens and dogs, the other an escaped convict who had broken out of prison 20 times, truly nobodies in the universe. But now, following George, they were enjoying the treatment reserved for top-tier figures, and they were naturally thrilled. You'll have many more opportunities to deal with these important people in the future, George said with a smile, shaking his head. Xander had only one city, a beautiful city that, from high above, resembled a 5-pointed star. The Nova Empire has millions of planets, unlike Earth, which needs to build so many cities. Instead, it only has one city, with the rest being scenic areas or military bases. The patrol ship, escorted by frigates, slowly landed at the Imperial headquarters building in a 5-star city. Receiving them were the Nova Empire's ruler, Nova Supreme, and a group of high-ranking officials. After spending 3 days in the capital, Xander, experiencing the highest level of hospitality on the most developed planet in the universe, George, along with Star-Lord and the others, set off. The Nova Empire needed his returned power, and he needed the Nova Empire to help Earth enter the space age. Their interests aligned, and neither side needed to pay a price, so the cooperation negotiations went smoothly. The entire negotiation process basically lasted less than an hour. "Don't go back to Earth yet, make a detour to Morag," George instructed Star-Lord, who was piloting the Temple II, after leaving Xander. He had sold the Darkster to the Nova Empire for money while on Xander. Earth needed a lot of money to enter the space age, and while cooperation was necessary, the Nova Empire couldn't continue to bear the burden unilaterally. As for Temple II, it underwent magical modifications after its repairs, and those modifications are now complete. "Magra, I remember that's a ruined planet, isn't it?" Star-Lord asked, a look of confusion on his face. Magra was a notorious garbage planet, once the capital of a renowned civilization in the universe, but it was suddenly destroyed for unknown reasons. Afterwards, the planet was submerged by oceans, which would recede every 300 years to reveal the former cities. At that time, large numbers of scavengers would go to that planet to collect trash. Judging by the timeline, it should be several years before the ocean recedes again on Magra. Right now, it would just be ocean, nothing there, and teeming with deadly sea monsters. "Let's go find something," George smiled, not elaborating. Since they were already out, they might as well grab the Power Stone while they were at it. For him, the ocean and sea monsters were no threat. If he remembered correctly, the Power Stone was on Magra, and the civilization on Magra was destroyed because it couldn't control the power of the Power Stone. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.